So I'm going to call the meeting to order now. Welcome everybody here tonight. We're going to begin, as we do, with a word of prayer for guidance. And tonight, Catherine Henry is going to pray for us. So, Catherine?
Sorry, everyone, I have allergies. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all together tonight. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to come together and work on issues and to be able to serve our community in a variety of ways. Lord, I ask that you be with the family of the child who was killed recently in our community, all of her classmates and people who were in her life. I'd ask that you be with the driver of the vehicle and also with the first responders that were involved in that. I'd also ask that you be with all of the children in our community to keep them all safe and healthy. Lord, I ask that you be with us tonight in making some good decisions for our community members and to remember why it is that you put us in these roles. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Catherine. If you could all stand and join with us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And Ryan, do you want to acknowledge attendance for the...
All are present.
All right. Good. So, item number 6, approval of agenda for this evening. You've all received that. Does anyone wish to place that before the board for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any comments on the agenda? Any changes, additions? Yeah. Anyone? Nope. All right. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. We've got our agenda in place, and we're going to go next to Rob Bristow, our head librarian, and he's got a presentation for us this evening. So, Rob, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate pictures.
All right.
Big words.
Well, good evening, everybody. As you said, I'm Rob. I haven't met everybody yet, so I work at the library. And thanks for letting me crash your party here tonight. Try to keep it brief because it looks like you got a good agenda going. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about the library. And so what I'm going to do is start with our mission statement, because we try to tie everything that we do into our mission statement. So that statement is to meet the educational, informational, and recreational, and I'm going to move ahead on here a second, needs of our community by providing access to materials, services, and programming with a community-driven focus. And so hopefully, as I go through here, you see how that mission plays into all the decisions that we make. So it's kind of a wordy mission statement. So we really tried to break it down into 3 main words, which is imagine, discover, and connect. And so you'll see if you walk through the library, we actually thought that was so important for everyone to see and a good reminder for all the staff that we actually put it right on a wall. We see it every day as we walk past there. So a little bit of information, kind of general information about the library. We are a Class 5 library in Michigan, which means we serve between 26,000 and roughly 50,000 residents. And as you know, the 2020 census, when those figures come back in, will be bumped up to a Class 6. So that's actually the largest class within Michigan. So we'll be in good company with Kent District Library and Grand Rapids Public and Muskegon and Holland and things like that. So that will be coming soon. So a little bit more information I put on here just in terms of some numbers of how much staff we have and our open hours. And you'll notice the little asterisks kind of denotes that 2020 was a weird year, which we all know. But we were actually closed for about 2.5 months due to shutdowns and things like that. So that's just on there so you realize, okay, this wasn't a typical year stats-wise. So while we did have fewer visits in 2020 because we were closed for, like I said, about 2.5 months, we actually did have a little bit more circulation, more items that went out and things. And so we'll see some of those numbers as we go along as well. So what does our community have access to? So what does the library actually give access to? Obviously the physical collection, so people can walk in our doors whenever we're open and they can check out items. We have a digital collection as well, a pretty sizable one. Actually, I would dare say one of the best ones in West Michigan, but I am biased. Programming, which we'll talk about in a little bit, some services that we offer, and then also reciprocal borrowing. So that's just kind of a fancy way of saying our residents can visit pretty much any library within Western Michigan and check out items, and their residents can do the same. And if they don't feel like driving over to Grand Rapids or wherever, we can actually order those items in as well, and then they're just delivered to the library. So that greatly expands our collection. So if you notice on the first page, it was like 157,000 or something volumes that we have in the collection. So because we have access through Lakeland, that greatly increases what's available to the community. And then beyond that, we actually belong to the Melcat statewide catalog. And so that pretty much covers most all libraries within Michigan as well, public libraries, academic libraries, special libraries, some healthcare systems and things like that, loan out materials as well. So how do we make the library accessible? Well, obviously the physical library, so people have access to the library itself. Homebound delivery service, so if people have a medical condition, short-term, long-term, they can sign up for that, and we actually will mail books to them, so they can select titles that they want, or they can trust us to do it. They fill out a questionnaire. We also, under normal conditions, deliver to some senior housing, nursing facility, and to local schools, so teachers can actually fill out a form, and we'll drop books off for their classroom and things like that. So, all right. So the question I get sometimes when I tell people what I do, and maybe you've had it throughout the community or something like that, aren't libraries obsolete? Isn't everything on the internet? Do people read anymore? Those kind of questions. So I would say if I don't know how old everybody is, but when I was growing up, the library was pretty much just books, and eventually VHS tapes, which tells you how old I am. But that was pretty much it. If we still kind of kept with that just books standard, libraries probably would be phasing out because they wouldn't be meeting the growing needs of the community. But we're a lot more than that now, so we go a lot more beyond books. So like I mentioned, programs and services, and as we go along, you'll see a bit more of this too. And then I'll also add that we're not, contrary to great stereotypes, we don't go around shushing people a lot either. I actually have been shushed more than I have shushed anyone, so. So, end of 2019, we were blessed with a very nice new library. If you haven't been through it yet, I would encourage you to go through, and feel free to call me up, ask for me when you're there or something like that. I'd be happy to take you through, show you all the good areas, and answer any questions you have. So what's new in the new building? So if you were in the old building and then in the new building, you would notice kind of a night and day difference, quite literally, because there's a lot more light and space in this one. So we have an expanded collection area. We have a dedicated kids and teen areas. Very intentional. That was one of the main things we wanted to do, was actually make the kids area and the teen area attractive to those age groups. We want them to come in and use the resources and hang out and things like that. We have a quiet reading room, and if you haven't seen that, it's got a fireplace in it. Very cool. We have study rooms, meeting rooms, and lots of seating. So I often tell a story. So as soon as we moved in and opened up the new building, seriously, within 10 to 20 minutes, all of these spaces, tables and meeting rooms and things like that were in use. It was crazy. I didn't know how people knew it was there. Somehow they did, but yeah, it was great to see. And we see that a lot too. Not so much, when we first reopened, but it's building again. We have self-checkout kiosks, so that helps with anybody who doesn't feel like talking to us for some reason. A local history room, a team game room. We have program spaces, vending area, and then outdoor area for programming and events, which we'll talk about a little bit too. All right. So, like I mentioned, we're not just books, and so we have a variety of collections and services that we offer. And I'll try not to go through all of these, as you can read, but we offer a lot of the typical things, the books and CDs and things like that. But we also try to branch out and do some other things that might be useful to the community. So we have some games and puzzles and kits, and a lot of those are, for kids, and they're geared towards education and literacy building and counting and alphabet and all kinds of things. And then we also have a lot of fun ones too. So we go from Candyland to new strategy games and things like that. And so we actually have some in different areas. So we have ones for adults, teens, and kids. And then Library of Things. That's actually one of my favorite parts of the new library, now that we had space for it. So that is basically kind of a weird, non-traditional collection of items that we offer. So we have cake pans and instruments and tools and craft tools and just all kinds of weird things within that collection. And so those can circulate for a week to 6 weeks or whatever. And those are items that a lot of people may only use once in a while, or they want to use it to try it out, like a ukulele and things like that. So then they don't have to pay for it themselves. They basically are just using it, and then somebody else can use it after them. We also have book club kits, so people can hold their own book clubs with the books. Mobile hotspots, so that's something we got a grant for recently, and so those have been used quite a bit, especially with kids learning from home. Laptops that they can use in the library. Seed library, also that's something new we started last year, and then we got shut down, so we kind of did it by mail. But people will be able to come up and pick out seed packets and grow seeds and stuff like that. So we had some people that were extremely good at growing things. We took some home too, and it didn't work so well, but I don't have a green thumb. So services, so as we'll talk about soon, we have a lot of different programs. We do a lot with computer help and tech help. We get people in all the time that, whether it's their own device or they're using the computer at the library, they need some tech assistance, and so we're usually able to help with that. Michigan Activity Pass, that's actually something you can use your library card. This is kind of a little known thing that we need to get the information out more about too, but you can use your library card to get free and reduced admission to all kinds of attractions throughout the state, museums and things like that. And so, let's see. So this is just a slide about the Seed Library. And the library things, this gives a little bit more of a list, and it's in there too in your packet, some of the various things. And then those are actually all reservable online, so you can even, if you know, I don't know who plans this in advance, but if you knew you needed a ukulele in August, party, I don't know, a luau or something, you could reserve it for a specific time period as well. So
my Halloween costume is coming together, right?
There you go. Sold. All right, so library programming. So, of course, I put the 2019 number in there just because 2020 was kind of weird, but we had over 18,000 people participate in our programs in 2019. And so this is kind of a general list. We have a lot more than this, too, but I thought this would give a nice little snapshot of some of the things that we do. A lot are focused on literacy, book groups, story times, movies we have, STEM activities. So really we try to, as I said, pull in from that mission statement, entertainment, recreation, education, learning things at all different ages. So we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome and everybody feels that they're getting a value for their tax money. So we try to have a wide variety of things going at any given time. And we're excited because with limitations and stuff like that changing, so we're actually moving back towards some in-person programming. So it's been tough not to do that in person. We like to have that connection, but luckily we have a lot of creative people there, so they've been doing a lot of virtual things, which is fun too. All right, so I keep saying we're beyond books. We're not just books anymore. So this gives a little idea too of some of the things, either outreach to the community, so we're going out somewhere, or we have that outdoor space that we can use and things. So we had one tree lighting so far. Had to cancel the second one, but hopefully this year we can do that again. Farmers market, I'll talk about more in a minute. So we are planning some more live outdoor music, some food trucks. We participated a couple years ago in the Meet Up and Eat Up program. We had a trunk or treat this past year. We're going to hopefully have some indoor vendor markets, outdoor movies. We do visit the senior center once a month to talk about upcoming books and things like that. And then we hope to get back to some school visits, if not this year, then next year. So this is a little flyer for the farmers market. So that started last year, and we are going to have our second year of it coming up in June. And it was pretty well received. We had usually between 8 to 16 vendors a week. And so we've already got, I remember, 10 to 12 lined up for this year, and still doing some more advertising. So we do that on Monday nights from 4 to 8. We have entertainment lined up for every week. We have food trucks and things like that. So it filled a good need for last summer in particular, just because we really had to do outdoor stuff and people were looking for things to do. I think that was a really good year to start that because it kind of planted that seed of interest there, so pun intended. All right, so what does this all mean in terms of youth? So I compiled a 5-year review from 2016 to 2020. So this gives a little snapshot of, how many items went out, how many people actually came in the building, and then program attendance. And you'll notice 2020 is kind of split between in-person and virtual. All right, and then everyone's favorite, funding. So where does the money come from? And so since you're on the board, you probably already realize it comes from the general fund of the township, and we are very grateful for that. So about 86% of it comes from that. We get about 3% from state aid that's given to libraries throughout the state. About 10% from penal fines, so that's traffic infractions. So if you speed and you get caught in Ottawa County, we actually get a portion of that, so thank you. To the local police force.
Particular around?
I don't know who has been speeding. I don't get names. So we appreciate the local police force, who are kind of our mobile fundraisers as well. So, and then that little bit of 1% actually comes from the fines, the fees, the donations. A lot of people assume that a big chunk comes from all these mean fees that we charge to people, but it's really not that big. So digital usage. So along with the thought that libraries are obsolete and everything's online and people are reading everything online, this gives a little snapshot of our digital usage. So typically for the last 5 years or so at least, it's stayed about 12 to 14% of our total circulation has been from the digital collection. And then this year, because we were closed for 2.5 months, and a lot of people realized that was their way to read, was online, that actually did rise to 19%. So we actually had a usage jump of 71% for the digital collection. So, and then that chart just gives you a little bit of idea from 2019 to 2020, kind of how that, it follows that same kind of curve there, but you'd see that it's ramped up quite a bit every month. we also, just a few months ago, were able to start offering a mobile app. So websites are kind of a thing of the past now. Everybody's on their phones all the time, unless you watch the Social Network movie. And so everybody's looking at their apps and everything. So this is kind of a way that you can get the whole library at, one fingertip. So you got the catalog, you got your account, you can sign up for programs, you can reserve a study room. We have databases that you can use. You can actually even store your library card on there. So once you plug it in, it becomes a digital card. And so you can actually just scan it on there so you don't have to carry your wallet. So last, I just want to say thank you to all of you for all of your work and for helping us fulfill our mission over there and making that possible. And then I just want to encourage, because it is one of the biggest struggles that we have is just getting the word out about the library. So we have social media, but not everybody's on social media. A few years ago we lost the Advance, so that print resource we don't really have anymore. So really the best way to advertise is still word of mouth. So as you talk to your neighbors and your friends, please feel free to mention all the stuff we got going on at the library. Tell people to check it out. Unintended again. And I would appreciate that. So if you have questions, I am happy to answer them.
Yeah.
It was like a whirlwind, sorry.
I didn't think librarians were supposed to be fun, Rob. You changed my opinion when I met you
thanks.
Some years ago, and you brought a great spirit to the place. It really is remarkable. And even despite the fact that we cut your hot tub when we were cutting costs and building a library, I knew that was disappointing.
So holding that grudge.
Yeah, that's what that flat roof was for, right?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. But really, it has been remarkable, the transformation. It's always been talked about, the library. Libraries are always talked about.
Sure.
Wasn't always talked about in a positive way, okay? We hear a lot of positive. Now, we appreciate that. You say thank you to us, we say thank you back to you, because I want to read this quote. You didn't read it, but you put it in here, and I think everyone should just hear it. Bad libraries build collections. Good libraries build services. Great libraries build communities. And I feel like that's what you're doing. You're building a community over there. It's a little bit almost overwhelming how much you have just coming. Anytime you go to the website, or you go to social media and so on, the amount of activities, ideas, and I'm sure you'll say that your staff and you collaborate. It's not just you, but you being here tonight, pass that along to them. It is astounding, the number of things, is it not, when you go through that and you think, now, who thought of that, Who thought of, mini golf in the library as a way of getting people, or,
Windows broken yet.
Discussing great books. I mean, it runs the gamut. And even to go over and to our seniors and include them in that way. I mean, there's so many things that a library can be, and you're really showing us what that is. I always knew when we were making the determination about building a new library and we saw the value in that, I knew that the whole obsolescence argument was not entirely true, but I couldn't put facts to it or statistics. You've done so tonight, but also I think just generally to see the variety of what you are doing is reshaping my own thoughts about what the library could be. You've kind of you've blown past my expectations in that respect, all of you, I mean, in terms of the staff. And it really is fun to see what's happening there. It's becoming a hub for a variety of things. So,
yeah, one of the best parts of any given day is like brainstorming, and it just kind of, you're on desk with somebody, and it just kind of ideas flow, and we have a very creative staff. So. Yeah,
very. I mean, very. Is that a ukulele high class there?
Actually, I'm a big Elvis fan, and so this was tonight was my excuse to use my Elvis cyclist.
Just a couple questions, and others. I'll be quiet here. But your favorite area of the library, Rob? What's your favorite area in our library?
I have a lot of them. There's kind of a hidden little seating area upstairs that I really like. That just kind of, the furniture, everything just kind of works so well there. Definitely the reading room with a fireplace.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. Kids area, got to be towards the top too.
Okay.
I'll just keep naming.
Yeah.
I like them all. I feel
has there been
very
something
lucky to be there.
in terms of its usage now in the time that it's been open that surprised you? Hey, I didn't see that coming, that people's interest would be that strong in X or Y.
I guess, like I said, kind of that seating area, because in the old building, there was one table, a couple chairs, and so, people would come in with their backpacks ready to study. Where's a good quiet place I can sit? Well, we have that table, but it's kind of out where kids are screaming and all that. So just the sheer fact that everybody finds all of that so quickly kind of amazed me. But, yeah, so many people that I had never seen in the old library that we see over here. And, yeah, we have our regulars that are on computer every day and everything, but always new faces coming in.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You seem to have fun doing it.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
appreciate that.
Well, Rob, you've taken it to the next level. You beat our expectations by far. I've not heard one complaint. People will stop me and just rave about it. They can't believe it. This weekend we went out with a couple, and they've been kind of struggling with COVID restrictions and so forth, and he comes in every 2 weeks and gets 5 books from you, and he loves it. Just loves it. And across the board, that's all I've heard. So your people are doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate it.
Definitely our goal is to make it a valuable asset to the community and everybody love it. So I should also mention, if anybody ever has ideas, we love to have ideas thrown at us as well. So if you ever have ideas for like the library things or programs or community partners or anything like that, we'd love to hear that too.
Speaking of the Library of Things, I've been digging through the website. Is there a listing on there of what you have?
Yeah, there's a little icon on there, Library of Things, and when you click on that, it'll actually give you like 3 ways to reserve it, so you can just look at a whole list, or you can select by month or by availability, or so if you know when you want it, or if you just know you want something, or if you want to look through the list or anything like that, down there.
Anyone else?
I personally love the idea of the farmer's market.
Oh,
I
good.
think that's awesome. And I'm pretty partial also because the fish area. So yeah, it's always fun to go in there and make sure, obviously, it's clean, make sure you got new fish and stuff, and to see the kids just congregate around there. So
They love
I thought that's one of my favorite things.
Yep.
Get new fish friends yet?
I did. I got new fish friends. We were paying a company to
We haven't named
take care of it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I know PD is one. My kids want to name PD is one of the parrotfish. So I don't know what the other. I don't know how to tell them apart yet, but they're a little.
Ryan and his fish friends hanging out at
My
the
fish
library.
friends. I make sure they're fed. So, I think the one thing like advertising is going to be huge. I mean, now that for me it was always like, obviously I was one that was like, do we need this big of a library? But now that we have it, I think it is a great asset, and I think we need to make sure as many people as possible can use it. So advertising, and I think the farmers market might actually help, because if people see that, then they see the library, they might do both.
Yep.
So yeah, other than that,
One of those goals for outreach, whether we have it right outside our doors, like the tree lighting or the farmers market, or also if we're going somewhere, so if we're doing meet up and eat up or things like that, we're trying to get that word out about the library and come on in. And so.
I had heard a year ago, pre-COVID, that you were partnering with junior high language arts classes to get those students into the library, and our daycare provider's daughter, of course, had come and came home all abuzz because they were regular library users, but there was a lot that she had found out where it was available, and was so excited to tell her mom and to tell the daycare kids, and wanted everybody to quick take a field trip to the library and all of those things. So I am excited for you guys to be able to continue those kind of partnerships, just because getting the more, teens and kids that you get in there, then the more word of mouth spreads that way too. Kids are good at pestering their parents to go places. So
They are.
thanks for making that happen for all of our kids.
And that's one of the things that it was It wasn't the first year we had really wanted in the new building because we did have to shut down and limitations and stuff like that. So we're eager to get back because we even talked about, how do we get into the schools, and maybe it's like parent-teacher conference night where we're sitting out there issuing library cards or whatever we can do, just to get that information out of there to everybody. So
I have one last question for you.
yeah.
Am I reading this right that it's the Lakeland Library Cooperative app?
Yes. Yep.
It's only giving me Allendale Township Library as an alternative or as a choice.
Okay. Once you open it, you should be able to select which.
You have the drop down. It just has one library in the drop down.
Oh. Forcing you to choose Allendale.
I don't want Allendale. No offense to Allendale. But okay. I'll make Ryan fix it later.
There you go.
Thank you so much. You know how to get a hold of us as well, Rob, two-way street on communication, and feel free to reach out if there's anything you wish the board to address or be aware of. So,
all right.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And as we've said to each of our presenters who's come, if you want to slip out and you got to get back to the library, by all means. All right?
Didn't want it to be obvious when I walked out.
We're all going to share it, not say a word to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right. With that, we'll move to item 8 of the agenda this evening, communication letters and reports received for your information, board members, and always avail yourself of reviewing those documents and links. So, all right. Item number 9, public comment period for items remaining on the agenda. To the public this evening that's joined us, we welcome you. We thank you for coming to both participate and observe our board meeting. We meet twice a month, and each time we meet, there's an opportunity for you to speak to the board. There's actually 2 opportunities. One is to speak to items on the agenda. That's the public comment period right now. And then toward the end of the meeting, we'll have another public comment period, and you can talk about anything that's on your mind that you wish the board to be aware of. So at this time, if there's anyone who'd like to speak to items which remain on the agenda, then please step forward and identify yourself, your name and your street address, and you have 3 minutes. Is there anyone on this first public comment? Okay, all right. Well, they may be lining up for the second one, or maybe you just came to observe tonight, so we appreciate it either way. All right, we'll close that initial public comment period then. Item 10, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda tonight?
So moved.
Support.
Been supported. Anyone wish to comment or remove an item from that consent agenda? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. Including, just by way of highlighting, the goal-setting meeting we have set for May 17, 5 p.m. All right, number 11, approve extension request for renters at 1300 Maplewood Drive. Someone wish to make a motion on that subject?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. A lot of attachments and a lot of letters of support written. I think this was fielded by our services committee. Amounts to an extension of time beyond the actual closing dates or what had been in the original purchase agreement to extend time from June to the end of the year. Any comments about that, anyone?
This just allows them to have a complete season before they vacate the property that is going to be, or that is now ours. So
The families came in, they were professional, well organized, it was logical. It looks like they're doing good works for the community. It seemed very positive.
Yeah, seems to make a lot of sense.
My only question or concern, I guess, isn't so much the substance of it, but having it, our motion is to authorize the assistant superintendent to negotiate essentially contracts. So I guess I'm confused about what elements are not already decided upon that we would need negotiation for. It just seems really open-ended. No offense to you, Rod. It just seems really open-ended to have anybody do that without, with like a blank check.
Yeah.
Thing.
Let me just address that. They currently are operating on verbal leases. And so if the board approves this, we want to have some restrictions about what stuff. They still have to clean up some things that we want to have cleaned up. And so we don't really know who owns a few of the items, and we want to clear that up. And so that's why you have it here instead of just a blanket approval. We want to find out exactly what space they're using and have some type of requirements that we want to have here. So we wanted a little flexibility if there was a problem when we actually agreed with them. That's all we were looking for. We don't have an item in particular, but when we meet with them and find out what space is theirs and what they're using, we anticipate some issues coming up.
So the flexibility is just to be able to account for some of those things that have come out of our prior discussions where there's things on the property that need to be identified and dealt with.
Correct. But like trash service, who's paying, or, one's paying the electric bill, those things we want to learn more about and clear up as we find out. So
the main elements would remain the same as it's continued, as it has been. It'll continue to be. It's just those.
Right.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense to me then.
That's good.
I assume there's some sort of like a commercial lease they'll be signing that says they'll carry liability insurance. That's probably my biggest concern is liability.
Well, that's the whole reason we wanted some flexibility to determine what they're each doing and what they already currently have. I mean, everything's been verbal, so we're going to have some blanket form that they sign, correct?
Okay.
Because we specifically want to make sure they're off the site and take all their stuff at a certain point. That's what we're looking for too. So, but yes, liability will be a concern. So,
were they actually paying rent, Dan, or were they simply covering costs and so on related to?
There is some small rent that they would be paying, yes.
Yeah.
There is some rent?
Yes, they would be paying some rent. Each one has a little different system in place right now, so depending on what they're using and what they're doing. So,
sounded like in response to Catherine, then you were saying that whatever they've been paying in the way of rent, they would continue to, whatever minimal.
That's what our expectation is, that we wouldn't change that, because basically this is the final year. So it's more of just what are they doing, when are they doing it, and when you're going to take your stuff, and what stuff is yours and remove it.
Got it.
Because the stuff that's not identified has to be removed still by June 1st. And so we want to identify all the other items so that the property can still be cleaned in time, because we have that escrow.
Is there a cleanup policy when they're done too?
Well, after you approve it, that's why we wanted this flexibility, because we don't exactly know what they own, each one. So then what they identify they own, then we'll have to work on that with them, depending on what it is. Most of them, we're not sure which is theirs and what's the original owner's.
Right.
So.
I'm talking about if they rent the property, in what shape they leave it when they're done.
Right, that'll have to be a term of it, yeah.
I mean, like I've rented property in the past to other farmers. When they're done, they disc the whole property over and it's looking good instead of, 4-foot weeds that you get to deal with the next guy you rent to, and he's got to
something different.
Try to get it back to where he can actually do something the following year if he just do something different.
Those are all things we're going to have to clear up when we work with each one.
All right.
Anyone else? All right, good comments. You've got a motion before you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, and that motion passes. Item 12 has to do with a proposed new policy on employee use of township vehicles. Came through the Finance Committee. Does anyone wish to make a motion with regard to this new potential policy? So move. Support? You're supported. All right, discussion. I think this might have originated with you, Michael. If you wish to lay the groundwork or share anything with the board relative to this policy.
Yeah, I guess the basics were previous to this policy. It was only DPW employees were allowed to take township vehicles home after hours with written approval from the board, but we let parks do it on occasion as well. And this basically because of the 2 lawsuits that have arisen in the past 2 years, I believe it's 2 years? 3 years. It's just come time where there's just not enough benefits to employees taking them home compared to the risk of liability that we currently face. And that is the reason our insurance has increased almost $100,000 a year this year.
Other comments?
Those were also the factors that I was figuring into. The fact that we are virtually uninsurable with many companies, as well as the 2 pending lawsuits that we have. It's just it's a step to decrease our liabilities and try to make it a little bit more safer on our side.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having a policy in place is actually going to help when we try to reinsure to show that we've done due diligence. If something happens down the line, we can say we had this policy in place, and it kind of hopefully puts it on somebody else instead of ourselves.
Maybe for the counterpoint, I would only say that one of those 2 accidents was really not implicated by the policy we have right now. It was not a going home after work and in a different community or something. So I think it's only one of the 2, and the uninsurability or the rising cost of insurance I don't think can be attributable to that one accident. But granted, it had to have been a factor. I don't doubt that. I would simply say it's a reasonable fringe benefit that hasn't been too problematic, and I'm just generally in favor of the status quo. So on that point, at least. Anyone else?
Dan, can I ask, is this going to affect us with response time of our staff? What are the negative aspects of people being able to do their jobs if they don't have that vehicle?
I mean, there could be some factors like that, but they did allow for the person who was on call to take their vehicle home still. That's in the policy. So that's how the policy is addressing that particular aspect. So at least the first vehicle out can still take their vehicle home. So, is that what you're asking? I mean, you're asking me to argue a different side of a board policy. That's not really my role.
Okay. So. Would the vehicles be kept here at the township offices?
Most likely at the garage, but they could keep them either place. Some might be either place, but.
Okay. How long has the policy been that they've been able to take their vehicles home?
Predates me.
Okay, so we're looking at a policy that's gone on for decades.
Yeah, it's not the policy is not as elaborate as this current one, but proposed one. But yes.
Well, as we look at this, did we have staff fragrantly take advantage of the township through this system?
Not that we're aware of. That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
A couple of them probably view it as a small fringe benefit to the position they hold, So I imagine to that degree they probably like that.
Sure.
I'm thinking we weren't uninsurable, 2-3 years ago, but it's been in place for a number of years. But I understand your points, Michael. I'm not strongly opposed. I just maybe slightly to the other side of things on that. But
right, and I would say too, the insurance company underwriters declined to even bid on that, just based on the current settled lawsuit, which was only $120,000. The current suit, which is still in litigation or deposition, whatever stage, could be in excess of $5 million. So once I see that, I got a feeling
well,
those numbers can.
If I may, that particular case, which we all kind of laugh at, it's a plaintiff's lawyer. You start high and go from there. But that's the one. That's the accident that was not affected by this policy. In other words, that's a little bit of a red herring. But
yeah, what time was that accident? It was Friday. Just after 4, and it was a Friday. Thursday.
But so the question I would have then is where are these vehicles going to go? Currently, they're going home. They're going to leave them where?
Well, that was the discussion. Is if employees were keeping them in the garage, that'd be a different case. Then I might have a different. Well, no, I wouldn't because of liability alone. But they're storing them outside, so they're getting covered in snow. We store them out here. The other good thing is we just passed in the consent agenda cameras for the exterior of this building, so they will be, recorded security cameras on that. I think sometime down the road we might consider, I don't know, I'm spitballing, some sort of, like the bus garage has, just an overhang, maybe at the DPW building. But I was trying to weigh out, if they were keeping them in the garage, that'd be one thing, because they're getting covered, but I would almost think it's safer here with the cameras.
I guess I'm looking at it from a vandalism standpoint. Vehicles outside, if they're home and in a garage, they're probably safer than they are outside, in a parking lot. That's why I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What's the end game with the vehicles? If how many are there?
6. There's 6 total. 5, and one will go home with
on the on-call.
Yep.
4 would be kept here or at the building by the cemetery.
Yep, and actually they got room for at least 2 at the Parks Department?
Not easily. We have 1 in there now, if that's what you're asking, and then we have the service vehicles in there. But, long term, we have a plan in place, whether the board wants to look at it as expanding that building anyway. And so that could be part of an expansion, to look at expanding to create additional bays to store vehicles in the evening.
Yep, so we got 1 going home with the on-call, 1 inside the DPW building, so that's 3 trucks that would be parked out here. Have we ever had any vandalism with our code enforcement truck or the assessing truck?
I can't recall any, whether we've had some or not.
One of them, Tic-Tac thing where they step on the hood of a vehicle.
TikTokers. They put bubbles in fountains too, I heard.
But if I hear you correctly, I don't remember now if it was Dan or you, Mike, but one of you was saying that right now it's not that the people that are taking them home are keeping them in the garage. So it's not like we're comparing them being in a garage at somebody's home versus being outside here. It's being on the street or whatnot, being outside anyway, at someone's home versus being outside here. I'm just trying to listen to what you're all saying. So Gary, it sounds like some of your concerns would actually be more alleviated by having them here, because here we just voted on having the security system outside to be able to see what's going on and catch that kind of activity. But plus I think people are a little bit less likely to do something like that when it's, we have more of an open area, and it's open in a good way, but not open in the sense that, people that are just coming off of Baldwin are going to necessarily know that we have all that back there. But it's going to be different than if they're all over throughout our community at people's homes, just sitting outside on the parked on the street or something like that too. So, because I want to say, I'm trying to remember one of the reports or things that were shared by I think it was the sheriff's department, that this last year was like a crazy amount of something to do with cars or break-ins.
Yep, break-ins, auto break-ins. I want to say 160 or something, just from memory from that report.
It happened to be last year's thing or something. So perhaps being here would be a better, at least from what I'm hearing, being here would be better for that. But so we have 5, and I don't know if I'm remembering this wrong. I can't remember where in the documents it is. So we have the on-call person would have 1, and there's only 1 on-call person at a time. And then we have was one of the 5 the police chief's vehicle?
Fire chief.
Or that's what I meant, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
There are 5 DPW.
They're all DPW vehicles.
Plus the parked vehicle, so that's 6, and the fire chief with 7 going home right now. 2 can still go home, so that would be 5 not going home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have total 7 though.
7 that are taking them home.
Currently.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. The fire chief is listed as one of the bullet points of the exceptions in there, though.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I was just saying, I think another thing, I don't think it needs to be in policy, but I think procedure would be to back the vehicles up where the code enforcer is after hours. That way it's close to the building. Kind of keep them together.
Hopefully in the direction that whatever camera would be faced, right?
Yep. I want to say it's a 2-head in the back.
I would like to see them continue to take them home, but the insurance factor is an incredible concern. I think our people have been very loyal. I love the idea of being able to support them this way, but the liability factor, the insurance, is a major concern for me.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth because I think we need a policy. I don't disagree with that. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way that they could take them home and still have them covered. Now, whether that would be, we would limit the hours they can use them unless they were on call, that after a certain, they work from 8 till 5 and after 5:30, you can't use the vehicle.
They can't use their vehicle for any personal use.
Yep.
They even pay us mileage to take them home.
Okay.
Yep.
So they can't take them out at all unless it's servicing from a township use.
Okay. But is that a policy? Is that written someplace, or what's the?
That's current. Yep.
It is.
Yep. Right along with things like don't text and some of those other things. Yeah. Yep.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this policy kind of merges or takes care of 2 or 3 different policies we have right now. Is that correct? Like, I think it said it was rescinding.
We have a cell phone policy currently, and then in our personnel policy, it addresses personal use of the vehicle there. So yes, we're adjusting the personnel policy and combining the cell phone policy into one vehicle policy.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing we discussed in finance was the possibility of offering a stipend to drive their own vehicles if they had their own trucks. That way they would have their own insurance. But it was kind of the whole consistency of the look. They're all white trucks. They say GT. When going to a home to do service, it looks better. So that was an option. But I keep going back to the increase of $100,000 in insurance. We could literally buy each of them a truck and say, you get to keep it. You just have to self-insure it. We'll save money in the long run that way. And I don't know if that's a possibility. I mean,
but we didn't all of a sudden ease up our previous policy and then have the consequence of our insurance going up. The current policy, or previous, whatever you want to call it, where we are right now, has been in place for a long time, and it has only been this year that we've had an insurance issue. And it's related to one accident that this probably would have solved and one that this probably wouldn't have solved. That's accurate, right? One small one that this probably would have solved and one large one that this probably would have made no difference.
I don't think this is the only time we've had an insurance problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was asking you about that, you said that the one we left was basically like the self-insured type of policy.
We're in a pool. Yeah.
Whereas there's like whatever the next like farther away thing would be that's not insured. And so we had that at some point, and then we went to the self-insured type of policy. Is that correct?
Well, we've been in the pool for quite a while, and then yes, we had to reach outside of the pool after they wouldn't continue us. They wouldn't requote us, so that's where we got in trouble. There's a lot of short notice, and then having the 3 claims in the last 5 years was the biggest factor we learned was the biggest headache. So
it's not. I mean, I get what you're saying, but just for clarification, I think it kind of came to a head this year, but it sounds like it's been something that's been more of like this piece, then this piece, then this piece, and now we just have to deal with it. But it sounds like it wasn't just like all of a sudden it's a problem, so that, you know what I mean? Like,
I do, but if we're saying that this policy has been in place for decades, it predated Dan, and Dan's very young and awesome, but he's been here a while. If this policy has been in place for decades and we're just now having issue, I have a hard time just calling it cause and effect, right? That this is going to fix that uninsurability piece. And it could very well slow down response times. I think that it takes a perk away from some of our employees. I think that by letting them take their vehicles with some pretty strict procedures in place as far as paying us for mileage and things, the message that sends is we appreciate and we trust you, and I think that it's important that we send that message to our employees. I know that this probably won't go my way. I'm getting that vibe, but I am not in favor of this motion.
And I guess for clarification, it will not be faster response times. We discussed that. And Dan just covered it. But also, technically, too, that policy said we were in violation of the policy because, as a board, I never gave permission for the non-DPW vehicles to go home. I don't think anybody else did, so we were already in violation. And this is something I had warned about 6 years ago, before I was on the board. We're in a very, we got two attorneys here, a very litigious society now. If you can imagine that. But I said, one day it's going to happen. They're going to be down Lake Michigan Drive or something outside the township at 5 o'clock, and they're going to hit somebody, T-bone them, and the person's going to get out. Oh, I'm fine. They look at the truck and go, GT. Oh, they probably have money. Suddenly, oh, my neck, my back. And I believe that's what happened on this current lawsuit that's pending, is they see the possibility of big money. Let's go back to the number on that.
I think a good point, Michael. I think you don't need to extend that point by, I think, exaggerating the point. That is, I don't think the $100,000 more in insurance is attributable to the fact that our employees bring their vehicles home, certain ones from DPW. Keep referring back to this big claim right now being made, but that one would not have been avoided by this policy we're considering right now. So your point is a good one. It's one that, we have to think about, and it's probably persuasive to some, but at least I don't think we have to exaggerate that point. To me, we've had this policy for years and years. I think the critical factor is you had 3 claims. I don't know what the third one was. Dan, help me. It wasn't a vehicle related. No, okay. So the third claim. So if you've ever had it personally, I got close once. I had 2 claims. I realized, first of all, you pay insurance all your life to get nothing. And then when you finally have a claim, even if it was for like $1,500, it just slammed you. I learned the hard way. I made 2 small claims, weather related or whatever, and it's like, So I think the factor was that there were 3 claims. And to your point, if this adds to the pool of possibility and risk that we have multiple incidents and continue to have higher insurance, then, it's a good point. I just feel like it has been something that hasn't been an occasion or a risk here to any significant degree for decades. And so to attribute the 1 out of 3 claims that were made that led to our insurance problem to the fact of this policy seems a stretch. But your underlying point is, and not that you need me to tell you so, but it's a good one, So,
Mike, you mentioned that it wouldn't be faster, and you discussed that at the finance. Well, what was the reasoning there? If they've got it and they have to go on a call, but they've got it at their home, automatically I think it would be faster. There's something else they have to do before they can complete a call?
It just depends on what the call is. If it's, say, electricity's out and they need to grab a generator, they don't have a generator on the vehicle. They'd have to go to the DPW building to get it. They could go to whatever the issue is, say a backup, their basement flooding with sewage. They don't carry all the tools that they would need. I think we discussed a little bit about the policy of possibly they would beeline it to DPW building, grab the big truck, the boom truck, load it down with all kinds of equipment and bring that because you got more options. But to get there to say, oh, I don't have the tools, I have to go to the DPW building, there's no time savings. I think we kind of tried to discuss what possibilities could be out there, but there was nothing solid that I recall.
No call for a vote at this point. I mean,
has there been a discussion with our underwriter on this policy, or is there been a discussion with the underwriter to see whether or not this is a helpful thing for insurance, or if we just out of curiosity?
If you recall,
there hasn't been a discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
You recall we had to just get insurance. We haven't really formed a relationship yet with this because of the exigent circumstance we had in January. But that's a good question. I mean, that's something that if we had that relationship, which we had previously, we probably would have had more specific input on that point. But
for me, it comes down to I've had 2 different times in almost 11 years living at my house right now that I've either had a truck broken into or even my garage broken into. I personally think that they're safer underneath the video surveillance right here. So that's what personally it comes down to. I don't think they're safe just parked alongside a garage. So that's kind of where I'm standing on it too.
Good arguments, everybody. I mean, this is one that could go either way. So, and be reasonable, either direction you feel. But I think we should probably call for a vote at this point. And, Mr. Clerk, why don't you do a roll call since it is probably tight?
Okay. Supervisor.
No.
Clerk is a yes. Treasurer.
Yes.
Mr. Schwam.
Yes.
Mr. Velding.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
No.
Ms. Henry.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. It passes 5-2. Motion carried. All right. Well, sort of in that same vein, item 13, discuss the acquisition of a replacement vehicle for the code enforcement officer. Someone wish to make a motion, place before the board some sort of motion. There wasn't one that really came out of finance as much as we wanted your opinion.
I'd make a motion to discuss the possible acquisition of a replacement vehicle for the code enforcement officer.
Okay. Support.
Not to be a stickler, but I think that's kind of like just the point of discussion.
Yeah.
And we need like an action item, like are we going to...
Okay. I would make the motion, let's see.
If you like, I can make a motion.
Yeah, I'll let you craft it.
That's all right. Thanks. I'd move that we acquire a replacement vehicle for our code enforcement officer of a comparable nature to what he currently has, which is a larger SUV or even a large pickup truck.
Support.
Okay. Moved and supported. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily going one way or another, but now you've at least got a talking point before you. Thoughts about it? Perspectives, yeah.
Quick procedural question. Do I need to withdraw my motion?
Well,
I don't think you got made.
It got support, didn't it?
I don't think it did. Did it? Kind of died. Oh, yeah.
I'll withdraw my motion.
I do have a question though. Not that I'm not sure that it really makes a difference, but it did when I was buying an SUV. So in the suggested motion, it was talking about a small SUV, and you just happened to mention a larger SUV. Like I said, when I was buying, I had bought a Kia Sportage. The Kia Sorento was like a ton of money in addition to that cost. But again, I don't know if that makes necessarily a big difference. But is there some specificity that
guys like to talk cars, right? So I know what you're saying. So I'm thinking, how about the versus the Yukon? I'm sorry, not Yukon, the Tahoe. I think that's what he has now, a Tahoe.
What's the Yukon? Yukon.
Okay. It's a Denali. Okay. Well, we got picked though.
Have you heard Denali?
So we're talking about getting another thing that gets like 7 miles to the gallon then?
I don't know what it gets. I have a Tahoe. I get better than 7, but it's not going to be a Prius. But yeah, no.
I think his request is a full-size pickup. So like a Ford F-150 or Silverado or something like that.
I think that would be better on.
It is one of the possibilities that I threw out there. A large pickup or a comparable SUV. Yeah. I guess why large, small, et cetera. He finds useful, as do others when he's not using it from time to time, the ability to carry items, which you can do in a pickup, obviously. I don't know if he would have a strong preference one way or the other. By the way, just for those who maybe don't know, we're on Finance Committee, we looked at the fact that he's had the vehicle he has currently, has Rich, for about 11 years. And it's got a lot of, an accumulating list of things that need to be fixed, which are pretty cost prohibitive. So the thought was, all right, it's time to do something. At least we agreed on that it seems time to do something. Maybe not. Maybe you thought we'd get some life out of it yet. But I think generally the thought was, okay, we've gotten a good run out of that. If we get something of a comparable nature, whether it be a truck or whether it be an SUV, over 11-year period of time, I think the difference in cost between that and a smaller one is rather small, and I think the eventual trade-in or sale value would be higher on a little nicer vehicle. So I'm not sure that's a huge cost difference, but my perspective is.
So is that part of the motion that you mentioned, sale or trade-in? would the current vehicle be then either sold private party or traded in for the?
We typically trade in, but
No, we usually we're selling at auction.
are we? Oh, at auction. Okay. All right. Okay.
Jim, I'm just kind of surprised that the committee didn't come up with a recommendation and that you're not bringing a vehicle to us to discuss and maybe have our gentleman make a pitch. Was it so divided you couldn't?
So here's what I'd say in a nutshell. Michael felt one way, maybe a smaller SUV or shared vehicle, possibly even with the assessor, if I had that right. I was voicing what I'm voicing tonight, and I think Ryan just felt like, you know what, I'd like the input of the board, and I thought that was fine. Right?
Hence why it was labeled a discussion.
Oh, okay.
It had come up 2 or 3 different times already in just over 90 days of being in office. So I decided at that point, because I was the tiebreaker, to send it to discussion to the board, because I wanted to hear feedback from other people on that one.
He is a tall man, and I would think you'd almost have to have a big vehicle for him. He's a large gentleman. But I would hope the committee would put it together and then come to us. But it sounds positive to me. If it's 11 years old, it sounds like a natural way to go.
My question would be, you mentioned being able to put stuff in it. How often and what kinds of things to do the job of code enforcement when you have to?
Yeah, not terribly often does he have to carry large items, or do others use it for that purpose. It's only occasional. He does, by the way, for the FYI, he makes a lot. I was surprised. I guess Rod kind of reported on how many stops per day he has to make. So it's going to be one that's going to get a lot of wear and tear. He will respond to, if he's first on the scene for accidents, sometimes he has to divert traffic. Sometimes he can stay and relieve, say, the fire department if they came. And you could do that in a truck or a SUV. So that's not particularly the item. I think that came up more in terms of should he still have his own designated vehicle, as opposed to one of the ideas was should he share it with, say, the assessor. And I think.
So how often would the assessor use the vehicle?
Well, during the summer and in the periods of time when they're active, it's very often. So
the assessor has a different vehicle now. What we've done in the past, the assessor has one that's gone through the cycle of a different staff person and then gone to the assessor. So, I mean, that's a different option. We just kept it longer and it was available. They don't use it that often, but when they do need it, they need it a lot of days in a row during inspections. So.
Yeah, I believe he handles just about 1,000 complaints a year, and most of them he's able to settle himself. So he's a gifted man, and he seems like he's out there an awful lot.
Yeah, the whole reason this came to finance was we were doing checks, and I happened to see the oil change, and it listed issues, and it said three quarts low on oil, and I thought. We need some sort of maintenance program, or I'm not sure how it gets to that point. When a vehicle burns oil, you monitor it. So then we just started getting into the details of it. I wasn't sure how many hours he worked. He works 25 hours a week. So it's a part-time job.
30, I think, but yeah. Is it 30? 25. All right.
25.
Incorrect.
So that was the issue, is it's part-time, and I mean, he does both complaints and inspections of new homes or building permits, only exteriors, if I'm correct. He doesn't do interiors. He strictly, so you build a new house, once your sidewalk's in, he'll come and check, make sure sidewalk's in, the lawn's in. That's what he does. I believe we had 179 new builds last year. So just based on the amount of time, 25 hours a week, they could definitely schedule it with the assessor. The other possibility I looked at was our trucks. Are we on a 7-year schedule now? I know it was 5-year. We pushed to 6 years for DPW vehicles.
Depends which vehicles you're looking at, but we're not always on the same set schedule now anymore because of each one has different mileage usage now. So.
Yep, and which I've always said, as long as it's running good and it's not costing us a ton to shop, let's keep them. But one's up for replacement in, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said a year? Yep, so I kind of looked at it and said, if we've got one that we're going to trade in, or we don't trade in anymore, we auction off, that could be used if he needs the truck part. I still lean towards sharing a vehicle. I think it's absolutely doable. And it gets a lot better gas mileage, the Escape.
How many hours in the summer is when you said the assessor would be doing the most work, right? Needing the vehicle.
Sure. It wouldn't be limited to the assessor would have to do a lot of work in December as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have to visit every property under construction in December, every property.
Okay.
And then they go to every property during the summer they hit and measure all the properties, that are built, and then we have other staff that are out there. So that's why they're getting a backup vehicle, because they're not out there as much. But it would be difficult to have. I disagree a little bit that it would be difficult to have them share a vehicle. It's just, on a regular basis, it just wouldn't work well. I mean, it gets a little less efficient, but it doesn't mean they couldn't do it. It just, the real expense of an employee is the employee. It is not the truck. And if you make them less efficient, you're just adding expense in a different area.
So we could end up with a staff person sitting here waiting for a vehicle to drive.
Well, I'm not saying they couldn't schedule it. You're making more demand to the argument that I'm making. I'm just saying it would be less efficient to have staff people share a vehicle on a regular basis to schedule it. I want to say a practical note, picture an assessor has to go physically measure every home. Well, you would as well choose certain days that you would do that opposed to other days. And so sometimes scheduling doesn't work with the weather. I mean, these homes do not have lawns or landscaping, so you're going in clay. So naturally, they try to measure them when they aren't going to be in 6 inches of mud. Well, that means, certain days they'll pick. And so, so then certain days it'll sit. Well, like right now they're doing board review. Well, they're not out measuring because they're here during board review. So there's different factors where it might sit for a while in that, so.
And I think that was one of the other keys too, is neither of the things, code enforcement or assessing, there's no urgency. It's not like, we got to get there now. So that's why scheduling is a lot more flexible, whereas if it was, say, a paid on-call fire department or one of our fire trucks, SUVs or trucks, they need it. They need it now. They can't be waiting around where this is more scheduled. It's like, oh, somebody's got a long lawn. Well, it's going to have to wait a day. I think we'll make it. I think the other thing that I said we should consider is with the new policy of disclosure on complaint forms, I guarantee we're going to see a reduction in the number of complaints. So we'll see less of a workload for them. Another big issue for me was, I believe Rod said 6 to 7 times in the past year, he was first on the scene of an accident. I started thinking, I'm like, what? In my 15 years of driving, I've only been on the scene of an accident once. It's a coincidence. But apparently he listens to a radio, a scanner, and then drives out. So then I thought, well, do we know how fast is he rushing to get there? How was he beating? We have a sheriff's department. We pay him $1.6 million a year to be the first responders. Fire department is second responder. Life EMS is second. Fire department's third. Why do we have a fourth person rushing? What if he's going 10 miles over to get to be first on scene and hits somebody? Well, the liability there, that's not his role as code enforcer. I forget the title, officer of noxious weeds. That's not their job. It's appreciated. That's great, but I think it's risk limiting, risk management. It just seems an unnecessary liability.
I'd like to encourage you to come to us with a recommendation for a car, for him a truck, and maybe invite him so he can share with us why that would fit his needs. And I just feel he needs to have a vehicle that's his own and shouldn't be shared.
And now you see the dilemma that I was in the whole, and why it came out as a discussion. I believe that he did need his own vehicle, but I didn't agree with what vehicle to have. I didn't think that he needed a very large truck to do it. So that's why I was kind of cut in between. That's why I sent it to you guys, to see if we could have a discussion.
You mentioned he's a taller person. How tall are we talking about?
Like 6'4"? Ish. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so for example, my dad's 6'4", and he's a big guy, but he drives a Toyota RAV4. I mean, it's, a smaller SUV, something like that. So in my mind, I guess that's where I'm kind of thinking. It sounds like, although I am very frugal and I would probably prefer the method that you're talking about, I could see this as one that it is one of those say gray areas where it might still be reasonable to have have him have his own vehicle. But if so, I'm just not seeing where we necessarily need the bigger SUV or truck, given what the role is. So, obviously a Prius would not work for someone who's, 6'4", but, something that seems appropriate, for the person and the task, I would think. So, I agree. I think we need, to have 7 of us debating all those particular issues right here, right now would seem not a very good use of time.
Let's have them give us
That's what I was
a
going to
sales
say too.
pitch.
The other option would be we can just table this because the truck that he currently has, it's fine. It just needs to be maintained. You got to make sure you put oil in it.
Well, before the next repair bill would be due, I think we would need to address it, because I'm kind of one of those people too that if you have $1,500 in this, and then 6 months down the road you might need, $600 here and then $2,000 there, whatever. I'd rather just go ahead and,
We're at 4,000 in needed repairs right now.
Holy cow! So I think we should handle this,
Yeah.
but
I personally think that finance should come with a number what they want to spend on a vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's fair too.
I don't think that's our job.
Sure.
As a board.
Sure.
You guys come with a number and say, listen, we want to replace the vehicle. We want to spend up to this amount. And we can approve that number and you guys can fight about what you want to get. But I think as far as going around what type of vehicle, finance comes with numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's my opinion.
Yeah,
We're micromanaging
We'll
here.
just ask Ryan what vehicle he wants.
Yeah.
Well,
We've already talked about it at least 3 meetings, so
Yeah.
we're down to the difficulty when you can't reach a discussion. You're asking a group that didn't decide, and now it's making
It might be
decide.
useful because one of the reasons Ryan wanted it before the full board is to get the input and your thoughts and so on.
Yeah.
And 2 of you haven't really spoken to it much at all. Maybe in sending it back to finance, if that's the decision to be more specific, you could at least send us back with your input, at least your preliminary thoughts about it. And I'm looking at the 2 of you because I'm not sure I've heard an opinion.
I don't have a strong opinion on this. I would defer to what the driver of the vehicle would prefer. I wouldn't send my husband to go buy a car for me to drive because it has to be what I'm comfortable driving and what I feel like meets my needs. I certainly wouldn't send it to a panel of 7 to choose what I was going to drive because it needs to be something that feels comfortable to me and that I feel like I can drive comfortably, but that also meets the needs of my job. And so I have no strong opinion except we should loop him into the conversation. And I'd feel much more comfortable with finance coming to us with a number and then saying to him, this is our number, so here's maybe 3 different options and which one do you think would best meet your needs?
Thank you, Becky. Gary, do you wish to give any opinion other than the fact that you'd like specificity coming out of finance? Is there any opinion you have as you've heard the discussion?
I'm an employer, so when I buy vehicles, they drive what I give them. That's just the way it is. So, but everything's the numbers got to work. And right now, you're talking all over the board from a car to a pickup truck. You need a number what you can live with.
Sure. I'm going to, at this point, withdraw my motion. I think that might be best. All right. And you agree to, or do you think you should phrase it as sending it to, we will.
I think you need to come to us with a decision. An 11-year-old vehicle that's burning oil, we need a vehicle for that man. And I think you should come in here and tell us what would fit his needs and he'd feel comfortable.
Okay.
So when's the next meeting that you guys have?
I think it's Monday.
15th? Yep.
Okay, next Monday.
To be honest with you, I think it needs to come to finance committee if you want to talk about a vehicle.
Yep.
I don't think that's the board's decision. That's not. I'm just
that's
saying.
a good point.
You want to have a talk?
Agreed.
Talk with them. You bring a recommendation to the board.
Yep. We were divided, so now we
I get
have
it.
more input, and we will take it up with more specificity. So, is it enough that I've withdrawn the motion? Anyone?
Well, they both have to agree.
And support, yeah.
It looks like okay.
Is there any kind of urgency such that if it needs to get on the meeting 1 week from now? Could it wait till the next meeting?
Oh yeah, because it can't go on the next meeting because the agenda's already been posted.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is, if there is, if we are choosing between paying $4,000 of repair bill between now and 3 weeks, or somehow figuring out how to address it at the next meeting, I would think that if we give public notice now that we're adding that item to the agenda, that would be sufficient 1 week notice for the meeting, but if it's not urgent.
No, it's not urgent. I want to say the repairs are like a light on the four-wheel drive unit, leaks oil, rear main.
Two lights come on last week, then the code's on them, and nothing safety.
So can it wait till the next, whatever that, would that be 3 weeks? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see why I couldn't. And when we do have, the assessors are doing board review right now, so that vehicle's sitting empty,
Okay.
the Ford Escape.
But I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to end up with $4,000 of repairs and buying a vehicle.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, the motion's been withdrawn, and it will be taken up in finance when we reconvene. So I appreciate everyone's input. Gives us a better idea where people's opinions lie. Okay. Item number 14, we termed it as unfinished business, WCET PEG fees. You'll recall that we, at our last meeting, had postponed a motion that was before you because we wanted to give an opportunity for WCET, specifically Alan, who's here tonight, as well as I think I also see Ken Crombeen sitting next to him, city manager in Granville, who is a key player there as well in the administrative leadership of WCET. And we wanted you to come this evening, gentlemen, and be able to address the board. I'll just tell you before they even speak that my instinct is, I'm not telling the board you have to do this and such, but my instinct is that we're here tonight to listen and learn. And that I don't have the expectation that upon hearing the input of these gentlemen that we're somehow then going to make a decision at that moment. I'd rather that we had time to process whatever it is they share with us tonight, right? Out of respect for that process and wanting to really fully understand it. So having said that, I'd like to invite forward whoever among you has been chosen to speak, or if it's both of you. We appreciate you coming. And Mr. Crombeen, you had to skip your own city council meeting tonight to be here, huh?
I did. I hope they're still going.
Okay. All right. So how do we differ? No, we'll get into that later.
You know what? Local government is local government. You're dealing with all the issues, big and small, so you're doing fine. I'll kick it off, and then honestly, we're here to be a resource to you. And so I think we need to hear, what kind of questions you have in order to respond the best way that we can for CET. I'm Ken Crombeen. I'm the WCET board chair. WCET is a collaboration of City of Granville, City of Hudsonville, Georgetown Township, and 3 school districts, Hudsonville, Granville, and Jenison. It's been around for about 30 years, and it provides community access television to the residents of all of those communities. Alan Dodds is the station manager, and we're aware that there's been a motion with regards to the collection of PEG fees is before the board. And so we want to make sure that we can serve as a resource to you and answer the questions because in my job I know how boards work, and you work best when you have the right information at the right time, complete, accurate, and it gives you the information you need to make good decisions on behalf of your community, whatever that might be.
I'm sorry to pause you. I'm hard of hearing. It's okay if you can't remove your mask, but if you can't, I'm going to need you to enunciate a little bit more. Either one, because I normally read lips.
I'll take it.
Okay, that would be perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm not missing what you're saying is all.
My community's policy right now is when you're engaged in the public to wear a mask. And so I'm trying to be true to that, but I will yield to whatever's the best for your board tonight. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
There's lots of different pieces of information that we can share tonight. First of all, recognizing the right of the township board to govern its own affairs, determine what collaborations are of value to your residents and businesses. And so you need to have that information that we're talking about to answer those questions for yourself. This isn't about what WCET wants you to do. It's about what information you need to make a decision for your community. So we have provided quite a bit of information. I don't think there was a lot of documentation shared at the last meeting. I think it was discussion. And so we provided various things. Alan has a PowerPoint that kind of highlights and overviews WCET, how it operates in the community, the good work that it does. We've also provided, you should have, a question and answer sheet, 3 pages long,
I put together 26 different questions that I know that are relevant to my board as a partner in WCET. And some of you may have deep background in public access television, some may have none. And so that's my best effort. It's not a legal perspective. It's just based on the knowledge that I've got on this topic for a number of years. And then also a spreadsheet of information that deals with revenues for WCET. So you can see where the revenues come from that support that station. It comes either from franchise fees from cable television or what's known as PEG fees, which is the motion you've got before you. And lastly, I put some information there about the WCET strategic planning process that has begun last fall and will wrap up this spring, because a lot of the questions that I think you guys have asked are the kinds of questions that other board members are asking as well. What is the current value of the station to our residents? What does it do best? What can it do better? Does that mission need to change? Has technology changed? And we are engaging in a pretty deep process to try to answer those questions. So I'll turn it back to Jim here and just say, in the interest of your time, what would you like most to hear from us? Would you like to view the PowerPoint? Would you like to go over any of the documents we've provided?
Yeah, I believe that seeing the PowerPoint might answer some questions we might otherwise ask, and it might cut down on the number then.
Let's start with that then.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Since you have printouts, I'm just going to ask, did you happen to have printouts of that question, the 20-some questions too? The 20-some questions that you guys sent over, do you guys have those as well?
I didn't make extra copies of those.
That's okay. I have it on my phone. If you had it, I was just going to reference that.
Okay. I'm Alan Dodds, station manager of WCET TV. I'm going on 31 years. Started out with the station way back right when it began. Within the first year, Ken come Steelcase. I was doing training videos for the past 5 years at Steelcase before I left to start my own video business, and then it kind of got tied in with WCET's volunteering and producing videos and airing them on their channel, or on the channel. And then it kind of fell in place where I got hired in and was helping out, and the station manager at that time moved went to Byron Center and started running a public access station out in Byron Center. So I took over the station manager's position. I'm not the best speaker in the world, so I'll just try to get
You're doing fine, Alan.
Doing
great.
I'm just staring at you intently because I'm trying to figure out what you're saying, because I normally read lists, so it's just...
Sorry.
If I was the one making you uncomfortable, I'm sorry. I was just trying to figure out what you're saying.
I am 66, so I'm, kind of the dangerous point, for coronavirus, so I was trying to be safe. Anyways, WCET is your community station. We serve Granville, Genesee, Hudsonville, and out of that station, we provide content that serves this community and this community only, are the three that we cover. We're not a news station by any means. We do not cover news. We're not part of news. We cover the community. We highlight the community events, and we re-air them for people to view on TV. The parades, concerts, meetings, things like that. So that's what WCET is. We're also an award-winning TV station. We've won numerous awards for our videos that we've produced over the years, and we're very proud of that. Our equipment ages. It gets older as we go on and gets outdated. This is stuff that was back in the early days of the station. We've since replaced that. This is our newer equipment, our camera. This one here was purchased in 2013. I have 5 of these that were purchased in 2013. They're already outdated. They're already discontinued. They already need to be serviced from time to time and eventually replaced. The new technology now is 4K. Everybody knows, you've been hearing about the 4K signal. These are HD, but they're already starting to wear and tear. The 5 cameras that were purchased first were used in the station's truck. They get carried out of the truck. They get carried back in the truck. They are in the truck at the cold. They're in the truck in the warm. So they get their workout. We use them for all of our events that are outside the studio. So they get a lot of wear and tear throughout the year. 2013, completely ripped out the studio from the analog equipment and rewired it and installed all the HD equipment. So that took place in 2013. That's the equipment that's in there now. That's already outdated, already getting towards the end of its use. That's the studio in use. Volunteers that are working the equipment. People running the cameras for shows that's being recorded in the studio. Different events, different talk shows. Cub Scout troops coming through. We have Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts that come through every year. They earn a media badge. The one thing that they like about our station over the network stations is the networks, they just go do a walkthrough and they walk back out the door. We actually bring them in, we take them in the studio, they run the camera, they get the direct, they get to run the switcher, they get to run the audio board, they sit up there and do a talent. Their scout leader asks them questions, we make a video, they go home with a video. Our truck, we purchased in 2006. It's already going on 20 years old. The last truck we had was about that age. The floors were rusting out in it. This one here seems to be going fine yet. It doesn't get used like a normal vehicle. It probably leaves the station on an average of 2 to 3 times a week. Some weeks once, some weeks none, depending on the event. This year with COVID, it hasn't left very much at all. It's still holding up good. I would expect within 5 years it's going to have to be replaced. So it's already just hit 100,000 miles. And then the construction of the truck took place in 2013. Totally took a box truck and turned it into a production truck. This is the 4th truck that I've built. I've built one for Byron Center's access station. I built another one for Grand Haven's access station, and then 2 for our station here. Now here's the truck in use with the volunteers operating the equipment and doing a production. In the studio shoots, we have shoots that take place in the studio. This one here is a Sunday night shoot that takes place every single Sunday night. It's a sports call-in show. People are able to call in and ask sports questions, things like nature of sports. We cover all sports, not just the local high school in the area. They cover all the sports. Other shoots that take place in the studio is a game show. It's all the area high school kids get to come in and compete. We have area businesses that put up the money for the grand prize at the end of the game show. And during the regular weekly portions, each time they will win a gift card. So they always go away with something. Other shoots that's in the studio are talk shows, magazine style shows. We interview all different walks of life in the area, police departments, politicians, everybody that works within the township and then between Granville, Jenison, Hudsonville. Just another show that gets shot in the studio. Council meetings, sporting events. We cover a lot of sporting events. That's part of being a PEG station. Our PEG stands for public access. The public's able to use the equipment. The public's able to produce programming. The public's able to air programming. Educational, we have in the morning, being in Hudsonville High School, the students use our equipment in the morning and do morning announcements. With our strategic planning, we're talking about getting the other schools involved in doing something of that matter with the station too. And then our sporting events we cover for the schools and events, concerts that they have. So just some of our concerts that cover. Community activities, parades. Our volunteers get awards once a year on their achievements and the goals of what they've learned and gotten better at. Then there's the volunteers helping out on productions. But was it for the volunteers, the station wouldn't be able to do what it does. Right now we're down to me as a full-time employee, and then I have two part-time, actually 3 part-time. One is only 8 hours a week. I've, in the past 4 years, lost 3 employees, which was very beneficial to the station. Right now we're really strapped, really tight. But with the COVID, it's kind of helped out for what we're doing now. So because I'm leaving and the end of the year, I was hoping to have a budget that a new manager could come in and have something to work with. Equipment-wise, I've been trying to save up because he's going to have a new vision. He's going to want maybe different setups, different equipment. So I was hoping to have that there for him when he, whoever, male or female. And then have a video here that I'd like to show. And I think Rob's going to get that going.
Air, or on our YouTube page. We keep you updated on the local sports scene. You can't forget about the children's concerts of all genres. Our well-established studio shows represent our past, present, and future. Highly competitive high school students have a blast putting their brains to the test in our weekly game show. Get in on the action and come volunteer and experience the fun. Your West Community Education Television station is about highlighting your community. From all of us here at WCET, thank you for letting us showcase the beautiful cities and townships that we represent.
Any questions or anything?
Alan, before COVID, how many different events were you recording and then broadcasting?
Well, I have in 2019 we did 96 shoots just for Georgetown Township. That's not counting the ones we did for the other 2 communities. That comes out to 5 per month. That's counting the council meetings and all the other activities that we did just for Georgetown Township. 2020, we did 36 shoots so far. 2021 now. And that averaged about 3 a month. And that was during COVID. So overall, we've done 96 shoots since the beginning of 2019.
Very good.
One thing about WCET, we don't have Nielsen ratings, but we do have our YouTube channel, and our YouTube channel is going crazy. Since the station went online with our YouTube channel, we got 418,804 views on the programming that we've had on the station. And 2020, during COVID, we had 43,795 views on programming that we had on the station. And a lot of that was because we were able to do things live. During COVID, the High School Athletic Association let us do live broadcasts of sporting events. One game, Granville versus West Ottawa, we had over 500 views during that game, just on YouTube. That was because of West Ottawa people logging in. That was not counting what was watching it on our channel probably for Granville. Uccello's and a bunch of the other bars in the Granville area had our station on their TVs in the bar. People were going and having watch parties, watching that particular game. It was quite a big rival. Just so far this year, since January 1st, we've got 10,948 views on programming that we've had on the station. Just Granville, or the game I did at Jenison Tuesday night, we had 114 views watching on YouTube. That would be most likely the away team, West Catholic, and then the Jenison area, I'm sure is watching on Comcast or AT&T Uverse. So you almost can kind of count on almost the same numbers as what watches on YouTube at that live time. So
that was an excellent video.
Oh, thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the PEG fees that you collect are only for equipment.
The Comcast portion of PEG fees are only equipment only. The AT&T PEG fees can still be used for wages.
Okay.
Under a different policy.
Because I'm just trying to run numbers here. You looked at your video, and your equipment hasn't been replaced since 2014. So you haven't bought a lot of equipment. Doesn't sound like in the last 6 years.
No,
and you're collecting
pieces. Yes, correct.
$70,000 a year, and you only have $170,000 on hand. So I'm trying to figure out how the money is spent.
Okay. The equipment money accumulates for big purchases, big changeovers, like from going from analog to HD. And I have got the paperwork, over $200,000 in equipment money waiting to be spent. Hopefully this summer, I'm going to be doing the switchover with Comcast and Charter to be transmitting our signal in HD. Right now, we're still only transmitting in analog. But we're recording everything in HD. So we have to convert it down to analog to go over air. That's going to roughly cost about $50,000 to make that conversion. That's the on-air equipment at the station, the fiber laser to transmit the signal, the fiber optic decoder to decode the signal on the other end. I got to have one for Charter, and I got to have one for Comcast. So there's about $50,000 worth of equipment right there.
But I'm not seeing a budget for that, though.
What budget?
Well, I'm just looking at what I've got here. It's just got the PEG fees, income, equipment income, but I'm not seeing what money has to be spent this year.
I haven't put together a budget to spend this year. Until I have my next board meeting, we talk about the upgrade for the HD. Around $50,000.
Okay.
Oh.
Because if I looked at the contract, it's supposed to be updated in March.
Yep. Which is put on hold right now because of the strategic plan.
Because of what?
Because of the strategic planning that we're going through.
Okay.
So.
But the contract does say you're supposed to have a budget for all the entities in March.
Correct. Which is all prepared, ready to present. So.
Okay.
But Alan, you have a group you're working with, and it's about 15 people from Grand Valley, Hudsonville, Granville, Georgetown, and they're collaborating in Zoom.
Correct.
Trying to help you and guide you to set what your goals are going to be when you leave, what the framework's going to be.
Right.
So that's all kind of coming together now, which probably makes it challenging for you to put together your budget.
Well, the budget numbers that I have to work with, I already got up to 3 months worth of payments in, and then the last quarter is our average from the first 3 quarters that we already got in. So pretty much I know what the budget's going to be. Nothing's changed on it. It's going to be the exact same budget as last year, except maybe some wage increases for employees.
Do you feel that the PEG fees for equipment are essential for having when you have new leadership at the?
Definitely.
Okay.
Because whoever's going to take over in my place is going to have a new vision. Okay. Plus, right now, Hudsonville Public Schools is going to be putting on a whole new athletic facility on the end of the building that we're in. There's talk right now, that whole hallway being torn out. We're going to have a cost unknown of how much to tear out the whole studio and put it wherever they're going to put us.
Okay.
So there's going to be a cost there that could be, who knows how much. I mean, electrical, all the wiring, redone, everything. It could be, you know, it could be another $75,000 to $100,000 just in that, if that happens. They tried to move us into church. That was only a 5-year deal, and then I would have had to move again a year ago because they got this plan going in that they want to do right now, and they wanted.
Okay.
Oh.
I know you're itching there, Ken, to add something. You want? Yeah.
The budgeting process does happen at this time of year. The fiscal year for the station is the July 1 fiscal year, so we have to adopt a budget prior to the next fiscal year that begins on that date. The board this year has decided it's time to do some very, very deep strategic planning and to really look at all the station facets, to review the mission, to look at what the future might bring. And that has not been done for a long time. And so that process is underway right now. I don't know where that will lead. It may lead to a status quo. It may lead to identifying all new opportunities, greater coordination with the schools. It could lead to a merger with other community access stations in the area. It could lead to a determination that there's not a value to this anymore. And so that question is going to be, or those questions will be answered as part of this process. And so the time to do this is now. Alan's retirement is pending. You know, he's got a date in mind at the end of this year. We certainly would like to make those decisions as a board with regard to the value and the mission of the station prior to entering into a search for a new station manager. Why would you hire somebody and decide the mission has changed? So that's the process we're engaged in now. That doesn't stop the budgeting process. The budgeting process goes on, but it may have a very real impact on the future budget of the station as we move forward.
It's interesting. It's a critical time for you with Alan's retirement. Alan, by the way, congratulations. 31 years is a career, you know. And you've got the possibility of losing the present space that you have at Hudsonville, which you had for a long time. You don't know for certain that you might. We know your retirement is imminent. We don't know what your replacement might be, nor what the new model might consist of. It's probably important to you, too, to know before you go making commitments and plans and investment, whether you have the support of the communities, right? And you wouldn't want to falsely move forward expecting to have certain cash inflow only to find out that we punt down the road and make a decision well into your process or something, and you say, well, wait a second, you just cut the legs out from under us. So it's incumbent on all of us, I guess, to be thinking strategically about this. I guess I have the question, I heard what you said, Alan, that you don't really have Nielsen ratings, and it's hard to tell through the channel 25, is it? How many are watching, and that you are going more to a YouTube model in a sense. Yeah, you do, no doubt.
Our YouTube channel airs the exact same thing as our channel 25. They're airing at the exact same time, the same content.
Yeah. I would venture to guess, and you might probably have that instinct too, which is the viewership on the cable side of things is probably fairly small. The viewership on the YouTube side, especially with the boon of, it's one of the silver linings, I suppose you might say, from your vantage point of COVID, is a lot more people aren't invited to these events and therefore only can see it through, the lens you provide them. So I think right now it's been an unexpected, would you agree? I mean, unexpected increase in viewership.
Made a lot more people aware of the channel.
Yeah. How then, this is my fundamental thing as I think about that I'm struggling with is, so the cable providers pay franchise fees, but they also have these PEG fees that they take from the users within our community. The way that Channel 25 is not, I'll just say, terribly viable, but you're finding viability through a YouTube model, and I'm just wondering, how can we ask the cable subscribers within our township as residents to pay PEG fees to support not the station which they're getting in their package, right, which is what I think they'd have in mind, right, earmarked toward the idea that, okay, I'm paying PEG fees to get channel 25, but in fact, what I'm shifting to now is a YouTube format. Isn't that asking the cable subscribers to pay for a YouTube, sort of the new way of communication of things that we didn't previously have available to us? YouTube presents a very viable way of presenting what you used to do through Channel 25.
But still don't do both.
But people aren't, I mean, I guess I can't know this, but people aren't watching Channel 25.
Listen, radio, so we don't know.
Yeah.
I do know that I'm getting phone calls from people
Yeah.
thanking me for airing the church services that I've been airing during this COVID.
Yeah.
They're watching them on the channel.
Even that, COVID has forced, I guess, ingenuity and advancement in terms of churches going online. Most of them now would say we do it through YouTube and in other ways. They don't themselves exclusively rely as they might have in the past because they've been forced kind of up to speed with some of that technology. I'm asking this as an honest question, not as a criticism, but to say, can we ask of our cable subscribers to pay PEG fees to the primary new model, if you will, of a YouTube channel when it's really designed for Channel 25? And I hear what you're saying, Alan. It's still on Channel 25. There's no way, I guess, of knowing if anybody's watching it. I mean, you're getting feedback, and
I think you need to be, it's hard to equate community access television with commercial television, and you're not. The resource here that the Free Communities provides is the studio. It's the access. It's the equipment. It is providing the community the ability to create its own content, local content that is relevant to those people. The PEG fees are part of your franchise agreement. The Township Board approved that many years ago, just like the City Council in Granville and Hudsonville did. As long as there's an identified PEG station, WCET is identified specifically in the franchise agreement, then that's collected from the subscribers on cable television, and the PEG fees are passed through for the equipment use. If you're measuring it against viewership of people who are watching WWE or The Crown or something like that, that's not the model here. You could never sell advertising from the Granville City Council meeting. We're just not that entertaining, So the resource is the studio. The resource is the ability to have that access. That's why it's called community access. The question that you're asking is the question we're all asking ourselves. What is the future for community access television? What is the model we should be looking at? How should this be structured? Because we haven't looked at that for a long time.
Yeah, and I suppose you've seen a declining revenue as people are cutting the cord on cable, right? So the last 5 or 6 years, the revenue from the PEG fees is declining, and I'm sure that's happening in all communities, not just in our own. It starts to make you think, how are we going, if it is a declining influx of revenue, how, even if we didn't entertain cutting the PEG fees and what have you, what is the plan? It almost looks like a slow death unless there's some other way to generate the revenue that is going to be decreasing. Because if you're depending on the PEG fees, they're diminishing, right? Am I right about that?
The AT&T portion of the PEG fees are going down. Comcast franchise fees and PEG fees are still going up. AT&T has been phasing out their Uverse channel for years now. They bought out Dish. They've been trying to push the Dish. People don't like the Dish. Staying with the Uverse, so they still are doing the Uverse. The Uverse is slowly phasing out, and everybody's going to cable. So yes, that portion of the PEG is going down. Look at your franchise fees, and you look at what's coming from Comcast. It's still rising. It's still drawing in customers. Yes, the customers have a choice to go to Dish, go to an antenna, and not pay any of them fees at all. So they say, I don't want to support WCET. I don't want to support the Georgetown Township with franchise fees. I'm going to go to Dish, or I'm going to put an antenna on my roof. They have that choice already. It's not that you have to change it for them. When they buy cable, they understand what their bill is when they get it. They understand when they chose to go to cable, they got these fees. There's a choice there already.
I would disagree with that. I would never even know what a peg fee was until I sat in this board last month. And I have cable.
Oh, well.
So to say that everybody knows they're paying a peg fee, I doubt anybody in the township knows what that is.
Written right on your cable bill that it's for public access.
I think it's accurate that people don't necessarily know every part of their bill. It's no different than your cell phone service.
Right. On your bill.
Okay.
My wife pays the bills, sir. I have no idea what I pay.
So the fact of the matter, it's structured, cable access, structured around those fees. If there were not those fees transmitted by the three partner municipalities to the station for public access, both in terms of equipment-only PEG fees and also the franchise fees that are voluntarily contributed by two of the partners, there would not be a station. It would be strangled. To your point, I think, Mr. Supervisor, that revenues are tight and limits on those revenue uses makes it more and more difficult. But that's the structure of cable TV, how it funds public access television.
Maybe I should confine my last question, and I'll defer to others, but we were considering the PEG fees as it related to the need for equipment and the fact that there's been, I'll call it excess PEG fees. Is there a reason that the funds are being accumulated, and what would you foresee to be the necessity of the continuance of those fees to your future plans? That is, it doesn't look like they're, and I realize you don't always spend everything that comes in. Sometimes you have to accumulate for the purpose of purchasing something larger, but do you have concrete plans for why you need what might otherwise appear to be excess fees in that account?
I would not say excess. I would say
unspent, sure.
Yeah. There. I think Alan tried to address some of that.
Yeah, help me again with.
There are several major areas that loom out there. Number one, if the space is lost at Hudsonville High School, where does the station move to? And it's not likely it's going to find a home in Granville City Hall or another community school that's part of this. It's probably going to have to be commercial space. In fact, when this station started, it was down at what now is the Village Bike Shop. That was part of Tri-Ace at the time. So location, rent, those kinds of things, that could be an ongoing expense. The studio truck for mobile shoots that was mentioned earlier, you don't buy those for a small sum of dollars. You have to buy a fully outfitted truck, and then you have to convert it. I don't know what the last one cost.
The WC got almost $400,000 in their truck.
Okay. HD conversion.
Ours was built slowly over time, so.
Right. And the station tries to do a good job of being stewards of that fund. We don't spend for the sake of spending. When it comes to that, the board's pretty careful about what those expenses are. So HD conversion, as you heard, is being recorded in HD but not being broadcast in HD. That's a significant technical equipment expense. Those are all the things that are on the horizon.
It's easy to see the beauty of the training ground for high schoolers and all that, and in fact the location and all. There's a lot to be appreciated about some of that. I saw my daughter up there on Brainbusters on that video you just did there. So I mean, there's a lot to be enjoyed from that aspect. But I'm trying to always come back, and I'm struggling with the mission and the purpose, and trying to reconcile that with the fact that it provides a good mentoring program for those who wish to go into technology and all, which no one would want to see that lost, but I gotta restrict my view in terms of what we pay and for what purpose. So I don't mean to.
Here's heard of Brett Makita.
Because I like sports talk, I know who Brett is, yeah.
He started out at WCET announcing football at Granville High School back in the 90s.
Really, I would have pegged him as a Rockford guy. He seems partial to the Rams, but.
He was friends with a senior announced with him that yes, he did not come. Well, he was not Granville graduate.
Okay.
He announced with a senior from Granville that they were best friends. Brian McGuire is a manager at a station over in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Casey Ford, another one that went to our stop station. He manages the radio station up in Marquette.
Your progeny. Not to be proud of.
People come through, they go on. They've had many of them that started their own video companies. That's what my last employee that just left, that's what he went to start his own video company.
By the
Stepping Stone, I can't say her name right. Rita something Cooper on Channel 8. Started out GRTV, had her own ethnic program that she aired at GRTV. Was going to Grand Valley at the time. Now she's reporter for Channel 8. Stepping stone for people like that.
Sure.
It's an avenue for people to learn a trade, learn something, and go on with it. I mentored, in my 30 years, I've mentored over 20 kids, either Down syndrome, autism, some sort of disability, and they've all learned how to run the cameras. They've all been in front of the cameras, talent. I have a group right now that's still with us. One of them I hired, J.B. West. You probably all know who West is from downtown. He works for the station. Met him back in 1994. His mom was grateful that I took him under my wing and taught him what I taught him, and ended up hiring him. Good camera operator, a die-hard person. He just loves what he's doing. I have another gentleman out of Hudsonville High School, not even in high school. He just has a form of disability that's working at the station or everything. His mom comes with him every single shoot. Right there with him while he's with us, and he's learning. He's running the replays of the shoot in the truck. He's gotten so good at that we just have run replays all the time. Lately been helping out on running the scoreboard for the basketball game.
Others?
I guess my one question is, you said the cost convert is $50,000. Yeah, give or take, yeah.
The portion inside my studio is going to be about $20,000 for the switching that will switch all the programming and store the programming. There for that from out of there. Then I have to purchase the laser signal to the head end. On that end is the decoder that decodes the signal. And from that head end, I can get another laser that will send the signal to Comcast and a decoder on that end. But them pieces of equipment are going to cost varies on them two cable companies on what their standards are and what them pieces have to be.
I guess my question is, what has held you back from already making that decision to change that? I mean, it was
everything that we're producing can be in HD in order to.
Okay. It was. I'm a Comcast user, so I pay the PEG fees in there, and I'll be honest, I didn't even really know about WCET, and I turned it to channel 25 to show my kids, and there was a game on there, and it was interesting to explain them that this is how TV used to be, how blurry it was. They're like, do I have to wear glasses? So yeah, I was just more curious the side of like what has held you already back.
Fight was getting
move it forward already.
Give us that bandwidth.
Okay.
Byron Center got it last summer, so I'm pushing for it now. Problem. So WKTV, I think they got it 2 years ago, but they're a $1 million station, or more clout than my little station.
I just have a couple of follow-up questions. So, if I understood some of the questions, right, that Jim was asking, and then some of the answers that you were providing, you said that the AT&T fees are the ones that are not as restricted, so you can use those to pay for additional things, whereas the Comcast ones are extremely restricted, and there's only certain types of equipment and that kind of thing. Is that correct? And then Jim was kind of getting to the idea of, like, as you're going into this strategic planning, you know, this little thing is one piece. You have franchise fees, and you have all these other, you have different communities, you have a location, you have all these other aspects you have to look at. And if I understood your question correctly, it was more about looking at the whole picture. There are other funding sources that are essentially going to be reduced anyway. Do I understand your answer correct, that it's the AT&T is the one that's going down so the one that is providing the wider benefit as far as things you can use the money for is the very fund that's going to be reducing.
That's why in the past 4 years, we've lost employees that they haven't been replaced yet. Money's not going to be there.
Okay. So I guess for me,
unless you guys can find it in your heart to pass through some of your franchise fees, like Grand Island Hospital did. That's a whole other.
well, I guess to me, and if I'm hearing what your concerns were, or your thoughts anyway, I guess I kind of share that same concern because it almost sounds like in a way it could be throwing good money after bad in the sense that if there's these other things that we can't control, all the rest of that, we can't control AT&T, we don't control Comcast, we don't control if people even have cable anymore because they're going to do YouTube TV or whatever, Hulu or something like that, right? So if there's all these other, and then with, you mentioned COVID, obviously your numbers were affected and down a bit. Well, on some stuff it was higher, but then other stuff it was down. It got me thinking, and you mentioned YouTube, a lot of the community events, a lot of the things that people might traditionally have done, to you or to the station to see, those things are now kind of doing oftentimes their own YouTube channel where they wouldn't have before, but because of COVID, they're now, taking on that kind of responsibility on their own, or just changing the way they're offering services or events to people. So, I guess it's just, in my mind, I'm concerned because, like I said, we can't control all those other fees and the fact that AT&T fees are coming down. And let's say we give you, we keep this and we do whatever we can so that you have this huge, pot. It says 237,000, I think it was, 234,000 that you have sitting there just for the equipment side right now. Let's say it gets to be, 600,000, so you can, when you have this new vision, I'm just saying, by the time you have a new person in this new vision, you can get all the equipment that you need, but then you're stuck to using it for equipment, and there's no fees there to hire people. I don't know that that would be a smart decision on anybody's part because, great you've had volunteers and it's been running on that, but it's just one of those things that you can't always, people are having tough times. COVID has changed a lot of things. So I don't know if that's kind of where my headspace is at, is that if you've been struggling with being able to afford employees for several years now, it's just dwindling and dwindling, and that part is not what we're even talking about, but it affects it. I'd hate to have a pile of money sitting there and then no people to work there to spend the money on the equipment, if that makes sense.
Right now, the main portion of the employees are covered by Grand Island Hospital. They're paying franchise.
See, that's my question. Has this contract been redone since 1988?
2012, I believe.
Because the contract I have in front of me says personnel and services to be supplied by the school district. School district provides sufficient staff to operate WCTV. They're to hire the said staff members. School district has separate rates of compensation, including friend benefits for employees. I mean, the school district's in charge of hiring people.
It actually says that they're supposed to be paying for the equipment too, and that if the municipalities basically come out of the agreement, that they divvy up the equipment.
It's even supposed to be, they're supposed to provide physical facilities on a rent-free basis, as well as in-kind services by the existing employees of the respective school districts without compensation through the WCT TV budget.
It provides the studio space at no cost. It provides the administrative services. Provide the benefits for the employees.
Okay.
All of that's happening. This is, I think from the questions you're asking, you can see why the board is interested in planning. What is the model for the future, both in terms of the station services, and also in terms of how it's funded, because it's not equal right now. And it is imbalanced to equipment versus staffing, and that has limited things. So we have those questions. And the time to ask those, I think, is before we make any more investment in staffing or in even a new director, a new station manager. So my guess is that contract that we are all party to is one of the things that will be identified as needing to be done.
Yeah.
All the meetings we talked about.
This contract's 1988. I do not have the 2012 one, so, well, that's been redone and differently, I don't know.
I think those would be approved.
Okay. But it sounds like the school districts have a pretty big responsibility in this WCET, more than what we do.
Well, essentially, I think this goes back far enough that it predates me, and I've been around a long time. But initially, my understanding that were involved, districts all took 1/3 of some fairly significant. Hudsonville was the one that was on television and hosted that. Granville hosted the regional alternative education for diverting students out of the general population into alternative schools.
Mm-hmm.
Denison, I think they were the community recreation, so it used to be far greater school involvement, and that was done at a time when the funding from the state was sufficient to do all that funding.
By the way, I appreciate your accessibility. Ken, you've spoken to me about this, and I know that you and Alan both are available for additional questioning and information and so on, and you provided us with a lot of information. Others who wish to ask specific questions of them while they're here, is there anyone?
I think it's excellent that you came. You're both passionate. Excellent information you're able to share with us. And I think it will help all of us as we face this decision.
One of the last avenues has freedom of speech out to the rest of the residents. Come in, record a program, and the rest of the township and city can watch it. Can't do that on a newspaper anymore. Can't get out of your house and yell out. Have the avenue of coming down to the station and producing. All of you guys have been in there. This last election, ran by the chamber, but we've done numerous of videos on during the election time for running for office. Or it's done by the chamber conference. So another avenue for to have a voice in the community. The way cancel culture's coming down, people's losing their voices every day. One that's still there and open to the community.
I too appreciate your passion, Alan. I guess question, Ken, since you're the one who brought this up, the strategic plan, what is the timeline on that? I mean, when do you expect to have, this is what we think our model is going to be, and trying to sell that?
There's essentially two phases to it. The first was an organizational analysis that was already completed, just looking at current structures, current advantages and challenges, those kinds of things. That was completed in January. Second phase is more the let's get everybody together, let's have a facilitated conversation, which we're doing with Grand Valley State University. All of the board members, including, you'll have 2 representatives from Georgetown that will serve through that process. Everybody will be at the table to talk about this, to go through a very specific exercise over 4 2-hour meetings, hopefully leading to a series of determinations at that point for our strategic direction starting, and that will be expected to be completed in May. In addition to the board members and the other folks that are part of this, we've got some stakeholders, content people who are creating community shows, that kind of thing. I would also invite, and we would like to have members of the community, of all 3 communities, who are either station watchers or people who have no idea what this access television is all about. And we would like to wrap them into the process as well. So perhaps you as board members know people in the community that might be willing to donate 8 hours of their time to talk about this subject and to help us find a direction for where we're going to go next.
Thank you both. I appreciate your input tonight. We all do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the board then, I'd like to make a motion to further postpone I know that we'd postponed my motion to this meeting. I think we should make a motion at this time to further postpone. I'm not ready to specify an exact meeting date. It could be the next time we get together, maybe it's not. But I think that a motion is in order. So I'm going to make the motion to postpone the motion that I had made at the last meeting, and give us time just to kind of digest what we've heard tonight and further study the materials that have been given to us.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Oh, okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Would you be willing to set a date on that so it's come back to it? Like maybe, I'm thinking August 1 because it sounds like by July 1 they'll have a budget put together because that's when they have to have one for the year.
I think what I heard was the budget's put together in March and the strategic plan can be done in May, so I wouldn't want to go beyond that because they begin to make decisions depending upon what we decide to do.
Right.
This new direction with Alan leaving and so on, I think probably we need to give them clear direction from this board or this township by sooner than August, so my mind...
I don't know, just a date. I'm just looking for a date.
All right. Do we have to? I guess would be my question. Can we leave it indefinite? Alan, you wanted to clarify to get something wrong on dates? Oh. Okay.
I think the fiscal year said it was July 1, so.
Okay. All right.
I would think we'd probably want it after our strategic planning as well. So we can kind of figure out future too.
Okay.
I like
Goal
that.
setting.
Yeah, our goal setting.
So the first meeting in June?
Sure, we can do that.
Is that
Sounds
acceptable?
good.
Yeah? There's not an urgency to it?
With some flexibility. Can we
It's
just,
not like we got to make a decision in June. I'm just saying I think it'd be wise to set a date to bring it back up. In June we may say, hey, we still got enough information. We can put it down the road another month or two. But I just think to postpone it and not have a date set where it comes back up on the agenda, just, to me, it's kind of kicking the can down the road. And I'd better we had.
All right. Comments and input from the board in terms of whether we should postpone to a sooner date and then if need be postpone once more, or to push it out there as I suggested perhaps as far as the beginning of June.
It does not matter to me.
All right.
Okay.
Likewise. Okay.
I'm flexible, but.
All right. How about I'll amend my motion. It's on the floor right now to postpone my earlier motion to the first meeting of the board in June.
Support that.
Second?
I'll support it.
Discussion about the amendment to the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And now I think we need to vote on the amended motion, right? Am I right? It seems a little bit redundant, or is that sufficient?
Pretty good.
All right. Okay, so that'll be the timeline, and certainly Ken and Alan, if between now and that time there's additional information you want us to have, you're welcome to forward that. In addition to any sort of plan that you might be putting together that you'd want us to be aware of. So, all right, with that, I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. We don't normally do this, but I'm thinking if people got to use the bathroom or just stretch their legs, I don't know, but we have a number of people tonight that haven't said anything and might be wishing to say so, and I wouldn't want to get us caught in a half-an-hour public comment and maybe even of our final comments, but you can prove me wrong. Maybe it'll be short when we get back, but let's play it safe and take 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay? Prison camp and how they rescued him. It's a fascinating book.
You got to go to Doc College too.
My third grader is doing Hitler revolution on the Holocaust.
All right, board members, if we could reconvene.
All right.
All right, we are up to, oh, wait a second, we're up to point 15 of our agenda tonight. And this is our second public comment period. As I mentioned earlier, this is the comment period where anyone from the public who wishes to address the board may do so on whatever subject is on your mind. We simply ask that you identify yourself by name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes. So yes, ma'am, step forward to the podium if you would. And if you could get that mic close to your mouth and so we can hear you good. Thank you.
I'm not tall.
Welcome.
My name is Carol Nowak. We're property owners at 7112 12th Avenue. We've lived here for 48 years. My husband and I and our family have lived here a long time. And our side street, we live right on the corner of 12th and Coster. Last summer, all around us, pavement was done. Didn't get any down Coster. How come? Called the road commission, they said it's set by the board. Called the board, was told, well, your road isn't bad enough yet. I'd like to see somebody ride down our street on a bicycle because the kids fall all the time. Anyhow, called the board said it wasn't bad enough, but it's on the agenda for next year. Then we get this letter. You guys decide to can our street so that you could do your own streets. You work for us. We don't work for you. What gives you the right to change what was approved last year? We just want to know, where are you coming from? Our street is bad. If you come around the corner of 12th and Coster and you're on a bicycle or a motorcycle, people wipe out because it's so bad. There's so many potholes at 12th and at 10th on Coster. The potholes are just horrendous. They say we're going to get it repaved, and then we find out no, because board members wanted their streets repaved, but they weren't up for repaving yet. So if that's the truth, remember who you're working for. And as I say, we have lived there for 48 years, and in the time we have lived there, it seems like the bureaucracy is getting worse and worse. It's like you forget you're working for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please, if you would. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you didn't realize.
Mike Henry, 7194 Michael Drive. As far as I know, the list that was voted on in December, this was 3 months ago, there was no approved list of roads before that. There was no plan. There might have been an idea of what roads might have been, up next, but there was nothing set in stone until it was voted on in December. This is a new board as of November. New boards operate differently. I would think that citizens would want to see how the new board operates, would be paying attention to see what kind of votes they're going to be taking, what they're going to be voting on, how they're going to vote on them. For this road issue to come up like this, and it seems to be building, this is 3 months later. Where were all the citizens 3 months ago when there was a discussion on this? I didn't see a lot of citizens discussing this when there was a discussion.
Please address the chair. Thank you.
I've seen, I know our road is really bad, and that seems to be the center of what a lot of people are fired up about is it's my road. There's other people here that live on the same road. We are all upset that this road has not been done in a long time. It's been 23 years since our road has been done. There are roads on this list now that are up to 28 years old that wouldn't have been on the list until it was looked at and decided on in December. What was decided was all the oldest roads are going to get redone this year, and that's from 2000 and older. That's 21 years to 28 years old. If they're not going to get done now, when are they going to get done? So my question is there is a lot of other roads that are not on the list that was voted on. There's a lot of roads that are bad, that are not on the list. So my question for the board is there a discussion on increasing the road budget so that we can get more roads done every year? It seems like it's been a long time since it has been increased. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just for the benefit of the public, when someone makes a recommendation, we'll have discussion time at the end, and the board may at that time choose to take up a thought they've heard you share and address it specifically or comment on it. So yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Rich Mapes. I'm at 7260 Coconut Drive. I just wanted to remind the board, all the individual members of the board, that I'd like to see you stand unified in your decisions. When you make your decisions, that whether you are for or against them, that once the board decides that you all kind of stand behind it unified. BS type comments from in the public forum that are insinuating or kind of calling into questionable ethics to be not made like that by the board, because you should all be standing unified. The comments like that, I think, cause contention and division within the community that I know you're trying to build up, and that doesn't really help building up the community, that type of a thing. And then since this gentleman over here brought up the roads, I know that there was a question in the Facebook social media thing that asked if there was a professional group or company that determined what roads were going to be done. I know that the proposal that was accepted, I'm fine with, was based on age of the roads, and I think that is good to take into account. But is it just somebody that's going around and looking at the roads, just some average Joe like myself? I don't know what determines really a good road versus a bad road. I can see that something's crumbling, but what's underlying it, kind of type thing. And so I was just curious if there was more to it than just somebody going around and looking at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You've been waiting patiently.
My name's Sherry Miedema. I live on Englehurst Court, and unlike most of the people that are unhappy about their roads being repaved, mine just made its way to the list, and I don't want my road paved. Our home, or our street, went from a criteria of a 7 rating all of a sudden to a 3 with the new list. As Mr. Henry pointed out, we should have been aware of this sooner, and I'll take responsibility for not going on the website every 2 weeks and looking at the agenda. I would think in this day and age we could, at a minimum, maybe email the agenda to, you've got everyone's email addresses who pays their bills online, their water bills or their tax bills, and maybe find a way of pushing out that information without us having to remember to log in every 2 weeks and check. But again, that's on me for not looking sooner. We are a cul-de-sac. We have minimal traffic, no buses, minimal trucks. There's nothing wrong with our road. We have 7 houses on our cul-de-sac that do not have sewer. Everyone around us does. They've come by years ago in the past, and the cul-de-sac voted it down. No, we don't want to hook up. They said, all right, we're not coming back. We've given you 2 chances. Okay, we're good with that. So flash forward, 20-some years. Usually with repaving comes a requirement to hook up to sewer. About a year and a half ago, I called the township before I spent thousands of dollars replacing my drain field to say, before I expend this money, I want to make sure that you're not going to tell me in 3 months I have to hook up to sewer, or 6 months. They said, nope, your street is not on the list. Of course, I'd have no way of knowing that this, at least from what Mr. Henry says, this list was not an approved list or a voted on list. It was just a working paper, but township personnel, when I called, did not tell me that. They said, no, the only way that we would ever have you hook up to sewer is if your road was falling apart. And if they had to tear it up to repave it, they might ask you to hook up at that time. Our road's not falling apart. It's not in disrepair. There's nothing wrong with it. It has minimal traffic. And so the 7 houses on our cul-de-sac that are not hooked up, we would respectfully request that you not require sewer hookup if you do decide to pave our cul-de-sac. Because we did our due diligence in checking. We have neighbors that just bought a house in August. They've just replaced their drain field as well. To saddle people with a, what is it now, $20,000 to hook up to sewer, I don't know, bill during a pandemic during these times seems a bit disingenuous. I don't know if that's the right word, but so we would like you to consider, if you are going to choose to pave our road that we don't think needs it, that you would not require us to hook up to sewer based on our due diligence we did last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, we have a policy that we might need to ask you questions. Can you repeat your, what cul-de-sac is it?
Engelhurst Court. It's Engelhurst. With your new proposed list, I think we're number 7.
No.
It's not on the list.
No, you're not on this list.
I just, are you looking at that number 1 list that you included in your minutes from December?
Well, I want to make sure we're all on the same page because we specifically were excluding the streets that had no sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't see that in fact, your chart had at the bottom of your chart of the last one, it had a list of the houses that needed sewer. Ours was on that as well.
Hmm? She's looking at Rod's list. Not on it.
Yeah, no.
Can
you tell me what it's called on your meeting minutes where you had the hyperlinks to your list? Can you tell me the name of it?
By age 1, isn't it called like by
It is
age number 1?
1.pdf. It's the first one. If you go to the December...
Yeah, that's the one I pulled up.
The December 14 meeting, it is line number 12. That's the one, that's the hyperlink. And I'm looking at it right now, and Engelhurst is not on there. So
Yeah,
that's the original.
I think what's confusing is it says roads needing sanitary sewer. It doesn't say roads needing sanitary sewer will not be resurfaced. So I think we know
Correct.
that part.
It doesn't say
so
that.
yeah, so technically that should say roads needing sanitary sewer will not be resurfaced.
So there's no plan for that cul-de-sac to be resurfaced.
Oh, that's okay. That's not the right
yeah,
spreadsheet. That's not the one that got voted on, though.
Right. No, that's the wrong one. That was just a proposed one.
Right. There were 6 proposals presented. That was one of them, but that's not the one that got voted on. The one that got voted on actually at the top says by age, but then it says minus sewer or no house, because these were all the streets that had no sewer. That they do have sewer.
Hey, you're able to further clarify that after the meeting if you need further
Yes, I would like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
All right, Todd Cox, 906 Fairwood Court. Lived next to Mike until he moved out on me 5 years ago. So, I am a concerned citizen, and I want to start by sharing a personal story with you. In my mid-30s, every step I took was painful. So painful that it would wake me up in the middle of the night. After seeing a doctor, it was determined that I needed a bilateral hip replacement due to the level of deterioration in my legs. I had that completed in 2014, and I stand before you today pain-free and able to walk 5 to 6 miles a day, just like my 73-year-old father who has no hip pain. Age was not a primary driver in the medical decision. The level of deterioration was, and I think the same should be true for our roads. I'm here today to share my thoughts on this topic, and I've created a packet of information for each board member to consider, and will email that out following my comments. In this packet, you will find the original road resurfacing recommendation, the substituted recommendation that was approved and presented by Trustee Henry, and 2 maps which show the roadways covered by each proposal with each board member's home address indicated by a yellow star on the map. Here are the facts. 4 board members were elected in August and took office in November 2020. One of the new board members tabled the discussion on road resurfacing and then submitted an alternate proposal for consideration. The alternate proposal was voted on and accepted by the board at the December 14th meeting. This alternate proposal includes 2 roads that surround Trustee Henry's home, and she is who submitted the proposal. The responsibility for coming up with the road resurfacing recommendation falls to the township staff, and the recommendation has always passed over the last 5 years. This is the first time it was substituted out by the board. I'm here tonight for 3 main reasons. I feel the logic of determining road repairs by age instead of deterioration is not in the best interest of this community. I feel that Trustee Henry should not have voted in the adoption of the substituted proposal since she is a direct beneficiary of this change. Trustee Henry is a lawyer by trade, so she should know when to recuse herself or abstain from voting when a conflict of interest exists. I feel that Trustee Henry adding her roads to the resurfacing plan based on road age is somewhere between a fortunate coincidence and an abuse of power. I feel that community members should stand up and have their voices heard when they feel an injustice is being committed. In this situation, I feel that's the case. I'm not here to fight for my road, although in full disclosure, my road was scheduled to be repaved in the original proposal. The other main roadways in my subdivision were both repaved in the last 2 years, so it makes sense to finish the 2 outstanding cul-de-sacs that remain. I have a few recommendations for the board to consider. Reopen the discussion about which proposal to adopt. Revote on this topic since it's the $1.5 million decision. Get an independent assessment for fixing the existing road issues. My estimates are $2.5 million a year, every year until we get them up to a needed thing, and then $2 million after that. As new board members, seek to understand and honor the work of the township staff and their roles before enacting sweeping changes. Doing so could lead to distrust and a dysfunctional working relationship. Renewing the initial proposal could help mend any potential strife. The board should determine guiding principles for the township staff to utilize when building their road resurfacing recommendations for the next year. In your roles as public servants, I ask you to lead morally, ethically, and with integrity. As I conclude my time, I want to thank you for listening and ask if the board would be willing to explain why road age is more important than road deterioration.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Eric Osterbahn. I live on Michael Court. About a year ago, I contacted the Ottawa County Road Commission about our road. They're in awful shape, and I assume everyone else here that wants their road done, theirs are all bad also. We're just, before Catherine Henry even knew about, before she was going to run for office, we had already contacted as a group the commission to see if we could get our roads changed because they are, or resurfaced because they are horrible. We were told that they were going to patch the roads and that we'd have to contact the board. It kind of died off after that. COVID hit and everyone was kind of, doing their thing. So we drove through some of the other roads that were on the original proposal. I'm not going to say that they're good roads. They're bad. I don't think they're as bad as our roads. We watched for 5 years as the roads around us were paved, but ours was always left. They paved right behind us, Rolling Hills Court, and then packed up the stuff and left. We thought for sure that was going to be our year. So I understand why you're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Every year we would go and look and see if our road was on a proposed list, and it never made it there. So when we heard that there's a chance we can get on the list because ours is so old and is so bad, our whole community was just so happy. We have so many kids that use the road because we don't have sidewalks. We have almost no toys that have hard wheels because you just can't push them on the road. There's so many rocks, cracks, sod, grass growing in our roads. Kevin and Kevin Court, or not, Michael and Michael Court, both corners will grow grass in the summer in the road. So it's not that, I'm not going to say that no one else's roads need to be done. I'm just saying that ours are in really bad shape and they show their age.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, we've got someone raising their hand virtually.
All right, hold on just 1 second because I brought a speaker because it wasn't loud last time, but I have to connect to my speaker. I think. Sorry, 1 second. All right, we'll see if it works.
Okay, go ahead. My name is James Dugma. I represent Georgetown Township. I apologize for not being in attendance tonight. I wanted to raise something to the board to talk about the ethics of the township staff. As some of you obviously know, about a year and a half ago, we came in for a new mining permit / extension, and we were approved with conditions. One of those conditions was to have a performance bond. We obviously went ahead and provided proof of that performance bond, set up the financial guarantee, which the performance bond cost money. Within a week of us getting our approval from the township board, we were contacted by the zoning administrator saying, okay, here's your condition, you need to provide proof of this. Immediately applied.
That was my fault. I was trying to make it better. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, James.
Very good. So we provided proof. This past January, I received a letter saying, hey, you have your bonds up for renewal. You need to provide proof to show that you have renewed this bond and again paid the did that immediately, but I'm one of those people that when I think I've been wrong before, I like to not be wrong again. So with that, I decided to FOIA for the performance bond of Heisinger Gravel, which they had then approved a mining permit last August. This has nothing to do with Heisinger Gravel. I've spoken to Bill Heisinger personally. I'm glad that they got an extension, but with their extension, they were also had a condition opposed to them to have a performance bond. So as I said, I FOIA'd for their performance bond on January 26th. On February 1st, I received a response with proof of their performance bond dated January 28th. I asked the next miner, who was the zoning administrator, so they were never required to have a performance bond on record, and she apologized and said the township staff treats everybody fairly. As a business person in the community, I find that tough to believe that we were reached out to not only once, but twice to put up thousands of dollars in a performance guarantee when a exactly similar mining situation next door to us was never asked to do this. And it doesn't only go to the zoning administrator. I reached out to the superintendent, Dan Carlton, to express my frustration with how I felt we were treated by the zoning administrator last fall. I didn't get a response, which was totally fine, but he knew that he should have been looking for the fairness of the zoning administrator in these things, and he let, I believe, the township board down and the community down. So I just bring this up to the township board as staff reports to you, and I hope you will ask the questions at reviews and hold these individuals accountable to be fair and treat companies ethically equal. And thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Rod, for using the mic there. That helped.
Could you repeat the address that he was talking about?
I heard Taylor.
Good.
Okay. And Taylor. Hey, anyone else, whether virtually or in the room here, that wishes to speak here at the second public comment period? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Dan Atwood, and this is the first opportunity I've had to come to any meeting like this.
Welcome.
I just am thankful for how we've been able to hear how things work, and one of the things that I would really like to know more of is, I understand it is that you guys work as committees together, and trying to create the list for roads and the systems to do it. It's not one person. And thinking of, unity of the board, maybe if you could share a little bit about the decision making, so not one person's just targeted for making a decision, because as far as I know, not one person can make the decision about a list. So anything we could learn about that tonight would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none? Oh, no. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the second public comment. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Micah Young, and I'm actually over in Livingston County, quite a ways away. But when I heard the gentleman talking about the TV station, so through the chair and to the board, if I could just give you guys a little insight on that. I'm a YouTuber. I've had millions and millions of views in the last year. And I know what you're thinking. Everyone's going to big tech. They're going to YouTube, Facebook. Here's the problem, though. People still need free speech in their local community. You've got like this, just look at it. If the President of the United States can get banned off of his Twitter account, etc., they can ban anybody's speech. So local community members, he said he receives phone calls. They can call him. They can call you. They can come to the meeting. They ban you on YouTube, you're done. So just take that into account before you take everything virtual and, go to the global New World Order tax that's trying to take out, a lot of small communities and freedom of speech. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, back in the corner. Sure. The long walk. Welcome.
Stage 2. Hi. My name is Nati. I live over on Chickadee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a Peace Corps volunteer last year, and fortunately came back because of COVID. And when I was abroad, I learned a lot about apiary and beekeeping. And so when I came back, I thought about having a little hive, but turns out the township doesn't allow having apiary sites just wherever, because I think from my understanding of reading the minutes from when this was discussed back in 2015, it was just like the apprehension of bees and them being a threat to children or adults. But I was just thinking when I was reading that, I think there is yes, the apprehension is valid, and it's a concern. But with that being said, I think there's also some misinformation, I think, when it comes to bees and their importance and the role they play in the environment. And I think if, I understand, the zoning laws limits the sites where you can have beekeeping, and it's somewhere out in the agricultural, I'm not exactly sure where that is, but I think, the board going forward might be able to revisit that issue, and I don't know, maybe bring in some local experts. I'm no expert, but I know there are some great local beekeeping organizations that do good work. So, if they can just come in and, inform us, and so that we're better educated and better informed, and maybe, we might even allow small scale beekeeping and informing the public how to do so safely. So thank you. I know those were the top topic, but sorry.
I appreciate that. Interesting. Anyone else? Okay, now seeing none, we'll close that second public comment period. Board, last item before adjournment, discussion and general information. For the benefit of the public, this is when we as a board will discuss whatever we wish to just inform each other about. I want to say at the outset, board, that with a number of the comments being made about roads, and I saw even some shaking of heads across lines of perspective, that you get the feeling that people want to consider more allocation of funds to roads, and I would recommend that might, in some respects, maybe short-circuit some of the conversation that would happen tonight, albeit you're all welcome to address any particular points that were made, but it would seem useful to have utilities take up a discussion at least about whether they wish to allocate more money or to at least consider, some of the comments that have been made and how we're doing in terms of covering roads on the cycle we had been on, whether we need to allocate more to keep up with that cycle or catch up, as the case may be. So it's just a recommendation. I would hope that our Utilities Committee would be listening with a keen ear tonight and probably talking once more about what more we can do. So with that, I'll move from left to right here. You don't have to, you're not compelled to speak, but I'll start down here with John. Anything you wish to share with the board?
Jim, just what you just said, I would agree with, and I'd like to be on the Utilities Committee. I'd like to push that along with, we have our goal-setting session. I think that would be smart for us to address. I also want to thank the board for listening so well to Alan and Ken and asking excellent questions and probing questions. And I thought that was done very professionally, and I just appreciate you doing that. This next part, I'm just not quite. This week, my niece called me and said, Uncle John, she got the flyer that Carol got over there, and what's going on. I'm trying to explain it to her. And a while back, Gene Atina had contacted us, and he wrote all of us. And I responded to Gene, and I'd like to read it a moment. And I said, Gene, thank you for your comments at our board meeting. You were very professional and detailed. Our staff presented their recommendations after traveling and evaluating each roadway. This method has been worked well because some streets have more traffic and wear and tear. I completely disagree with the new method and expressed my opinion at the meeting. I was shocked at this last-minute proposal. You're welcome to call me after 5 o'clock to 8. I gave my phone number. Gene didn't call, but I offered it. Thank you for your citizenship and participation. I signed my name, John Schwam. I was foiled on this, I guess, with the rest of us here on the board, and it shocked me. I wasn't behind anything. I simply responded to Gene, which I do with many individuals. In fact, Chad Tuttle was just very proud that every time we got a letter, boy, Chad was 100%. The FOIA really bothers me. The discussions we've had, I'm not a lawyer, and we've had a number of legal discussions here that has been bantering back and forth. Our very first meeting, some individuals were here, some were online. My wife got COVID. I consequently got it, and then I was quarantined. And I asked the board, can I, from home, still participate? And the answer was no. I want to be careful that I've done this FOIA properly. I don't know. I believe I should have been able to participate at that meeting. The last couple meetings, there's been banter between our two lawyers back and forth. I believe we need a lawyer at our meeting. And this is what Granville does. If we were to ask Ken when he was here, I never thought we'd quite come to this, but I think it's protection for all of us. And I would like to see on our agenda at our next meeting that we discuss having a lawyer present at our meetings, that we have that resource there. Many communities do this. We're over 50,000. And if I'm going to be FOIA'd, I need somebody to talk to. It bothers me a great deal. So I'd like to make a motion that this be put on the agenda for our next meeting, whether or not to have legal counsel present at our board meetings. Can I get some support?
Support.
Can we put that on the agenda for the next meeting, having 2 board members?
I think that's all it requires. Am I right, Dan? 2 board members supporting for the placement of item on the agenda at an open board meeting? And
usually it's the board itself can place items on the agenda.
Sure.
Or any committee can place items on the agenda, or it can come from one of the other, like planning commission or other items on your policy. But you certainly have the ability to do it, and you can certainly do it on discussion anyway, which is you're doing right now, and anything can come up during discussion. So if you want a specific motion, I'm not
Well, I would like to have discussion at our next meeting. I think it's important we have someone here. This is what major municipalities do, and I feel like I'm at a terrible disadvantage. And getting that FOIA shook me up. Pretty much when you're on the township board, this is like being on church consistory, and you're volunteering your time. It pays very little, and you do this because you want to do it, and then to have everything put at risk because someone wants, I don't believe you were able to look at my private emails, but I just furnished it anyway because I didn't want this to go on. But now when is this going to stop? And every time I answer someone, do I have to say to myself, okay, am I wording this right? That when someone analyzes it, that I'm not going to get myself in trouble? I've been in this community for a long time. My reputation is very important. And in my heart, I'm trying not to make a mistake. I hope I did this exactly right. But I would like to have had a lawyer. I could have said, okay, this is what happened. I answered Gene. I had nothing I had done with him previously. I thought he was one of my ex-students. I really did. I thought he was one of my ex-students. And then I went through all my emails, and I see that he was involved in hockey, and I corresponded with him back in 2009, 2010. Very nice man, heavily involved, good person. But when I get FOIA'd, I can't believe that. And I don't want to say any more about if the person wants to talk about who did this, that's up to them. But I need legal counsel here. I do not feel comfortable anymore. And we shouldn't have these debates, and we shouldn't have hours to go, our meetings go 4.5 hours. I mean, we used to pretty much wrap everything up in 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, and that was it. And then we had meetings after this, and now we're not, because we're debating minutia. And I think if we had a lawyer here that we just say, sir, ma'am, here's where we're at, it would end an awful lot of this. So I'm sorry, like I said, I thank you for being so good to Alan and Ken. But I believe we need to have a lawyer at our meetings from now on. And I just say that.
Just to clarify one thing, just for the benefit of maybe the public too, but when he says we have meetings after meetings, he's referring to subcommittee meetings. So we're not talking about the board ends a meeting and then the board.
We used to be able to have our utilities meeting, and now we have to schedule it to a separate date because you had one meeting here that went to almost 10:30 at night. But I am very upset that I was unable to be Zoom in with the rest of you folks. And I think that's when some of the stuff came up about the roads and so forth, and I came here, and it was, this is the way it's going to be. And I said to you, are you guys okay with this? And that went through, and this was after Rod had driven all these roads, and we had formal inspection that's gone on for years, and all that was thrown out. And very frankly, I think it should have been said at that time, I did not know if a board member was on one of those roads, but I figured someone was. It should have been made clear. And I believe you guys must have known that there was someone that was going to be on that list, and the public should have known. Also, you're saying these things came out of committee. Now, Jim won overwhelmingly, ran unopposed, and he set up the committees that we're going to operate by. And when we sat down and he gave us, this is the committees I want to have, you canceled him. You said no. And then you appointed who the committees were going to be, which was yourselves. And so in committee, you're bringing to the board for us to vote on, and it's already 4-3. And then you refer, well, this came out of committee. It came out of your committee, not Jim's. And it's outrageous. And then to be FOIA'd, and then not to be able to Zoom in on these meetings because it's unconstitutional. Can't believe it. I believe most municipalities are until the end of this month that they're Zooming. And we're not. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to take the risk. But to not allow me when I am quarantined is incredible that you did that. I did not want to have something that would end up in the news. I did not want to have something that would lead to a forum, to a platform. And that's why I didn't follow on it. I need to have a lawyer here.
before we go to the next person, if there's anyone else who wishes to comment during this period of discussion, forgive my ignorance, but it's been moved and seconded as to have that discussion. What does it require? We can vote on this now.
It doesn't require anything to have a discussion at the next meeting. If you want it as an agenda item, if you're looking for a proposal, that would be different.
I'd like it as an agenda item.
All right, so then it's either got to come through committee or it's got to be voted on here by the majority of the board.
But before, it was just two people, and then it was put on.
I think, John, when I wanted to start doing meetings virtually via Zoom, when we went to approve the agenda, I just asked to have an agenda item added, and then it has to be added, correct, as part of approving the agenda? Because that's what I did to get that conversation rolling 2 meetings ago. And so it seems like I hear your heart that this is important to you. It seems like at our next meeting, when it's time to approve the agenda, can't John just ask that be added as item 13.1 or something?
But we always vote on that, an amendment to the agenda. So it's still a board vote to say yay or nay, right? Right? I just asked to have an agenda item added and then it was voted on as part of approving the agenda as revised. But yeah, so again, it would have to be a majority vote to revise the agenda. So,
Jim, why doesn't the Finance Committee just discuss this? And if the Finance Committee says no, then I'll bring it up. But I'd want it on the agenda. And I think it would say a lot if the Finance Committee says no.
Okay. So it's been moved and supported, and I'm going to interpret that as, or maybe you want to clarify your motion as one, to send it to Finance here initially to be discussed by the Finance Committee. And obviously you can reserve the right to ask the board to add it to a future agenda if you don't see it come out of committee or don't like it.
If the Finance Committee says no, that says so much. So, yeah, send it to the Finance Committee. But if it doesn't, then I'm going to bring it up.
Okay. So you're moving to amend your motion to say that you'd like council to be present at meetings, or at least now instead you're saying I'd like the Finance Committee to discuss that possibility.
If what I had proposed is not possible, and it sounds like I was under the assumption that it only took 2 people and it came out of the agenda, but if I'm being told no, then let's go to the Finance Committee.
If I'm correct, you can withdraw your motion. I think you can simply refer a matter to a committee. Can we not, without a full board vote? Please again.
Certainly.
No? Still got you. All right. So as amended, then you would send it to the Finance Committee. You second that then, Becky? Still? All right. Why don't we is there a comment on the motion itself? At this point, it would allow that discussion to first take place in a committee setting and then possibly come before the full board. And if it didn't, then John is indicating he would bring it up. But
I think that's kind of part of the problem we're having then, because if it goes to committee and the committee discusses it and the committee says no, that's not what we should do, then I hear John saying, well, then I'm going to bring it up and want it on the board's agenda anyway. So I hear him saying that it doesn't matter what anybody else says. He wants an attorney here, and that's the way he wants it. So I don't think there'd be
the option that you can make a decision on this if you'd like to. There's no threat involved here.
There's money involved here.
Yeah. A lot of money.
The fact that we're all citizens and we can read the law ourselves, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous to say that we're going to handpick an attorney that we're going to go to. So if, as you say, Jim and I are disagreeing on something as the 2 attorneys on the board, then we can go and look at, XYZ attorney and say, okay, referee, which way are we going? And then that attorney gets to just pick what the law is. That's not okay.
You're proposing to have
unelected communities, this is what they do. It's unusual that we don't.
I think
and we just had a board member forwarded by another. I'd like to know, what are my rights? And did I handle this right?
Then get your own attorney.
It is true that some townships and cities, I can think of like Michael Brown is at the Cascade Township meetings. I think it was Randy Cracker for years, used to be at Granville. I'm not sure who from Barnum goes there now. So it's different protocol in different settings. Not everybody does so, and not everyone, it's not wrong to do so. In other words, you're not saying, hey, unelected person come in. But by the same token, it also isn't something that is done in the majority of jurisdictions, of course, because many of them are much smaller. So I'm not taking sides in that debate. I'm just simply, it seems to me that since we didn't come, and it's the lateness of the hour, we didn't come tonight prepared to necessarily debate that subject, and that would be, I can tell already, a period of time for debate. I might ask John, I might ask that people be given the time to think about this subject and not be forced to vote on it at the end of a meeting at 10:15.
I think this is newsworthy enough and so unusual that I think the news media would be interested in this. That you'd have all of us FOIA'd.
And it's the right of the public.
That's where
You know what?
I need help. Hey, stop.
It better not continue. I'm just saying because it's been enough and it's a personal attack and then you know it's my husband that FOIA'd you and I didn't tell him to. I didn't know he did it until after he sent it. I am sick and tired of the personal attacks. So it better end now.
Okay. So we're obviously not being productive in this conversation right now. The question before you is you've got an amended motion whether to send it to finance. Of course, there's always the option to withdraw the motion, but I think those are probably our only two options. I'm going to look to you, John. Do you wish to have a vote on the motion as amended to send it to finance, or do you wish to withdraw it?
No, I'd like to vote it on.
Okay. I'm going to ask, because I don't think it would be productive to have much more conversation about it right now. Why don't you call roll on that?
Would you repeat the motion?
This is just to send
all the roll.
to finance to
To
discuss
send-
whether to have another attorney here.
Fine.
All right. So,
All right. Supervisor.
yes.
Treasurer.
No.
Mr. Swam.
Yes.
Mr. Velding.
Yeah.
Steele.
Yes.
Henry.
No.
Clerk is a yes.
All right. That motion's passed, and looking still to my left, moving to my right. Either Gary or Michael, anything to add?
I know there's been a lot of discussion on roads. And my only comment is this, there's no meetings of the Utilities Committee in September and October. And November was my first meeting. Transition from one board to the next has been dismal, terrible. Nobody really knows. I knew very little about what committee I was going to do, and there was very little information other than past minutes, but they had met 2 months before I met. So, decisions are made on roads. I'm happy with the decision. There'll be more roads done next year, and more the year after that. As far as proposals are concerned, there's no roads decided for next year already. That proposal comes later on in the fall. So I can live with my decision, no problem. I do think the utilities probably should look at increasing funding to fixing roads. I'd hope our governor was going to do it. That's what she ran on, but she hasn't come through, so I guess we'll have to kick it up a little bit. So that's my only comment. I've been a little bit discouraged on the transition from one board to the next. I understand the committees I'm on. I do this type of work for a living, so it's not that difficult, but I can see for others that may never did that before, it would be more difficult. So there's my comment.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
I would say Gary has been a rock star on the Planning Commission. I went to the last Planning Commission, and he's a phenomenal asset to it.
Thanks, Gary.
Excellent. So that was a great appointment that the board made. As far as roads go, I've been bringing this up for 7 years. The system is broken. It's a terrible system, and we've never addressed it. And I think in goal setting, we are going to look at that because there is no perfect answer. There's so many variables. Given the way it hasn't been working in the past, hey, what's wrong with something different? I was fine with that. I think it got blown up into something a lot bigger than it needed to be. A couple key things. It was a proposed list, a recommendation. Looking back at meeting minutes, actually Fairwood Court, Gulfside Court, those were all slated to be done in 2016. And that was a recommendation of the Road Commission. And they are professionals. They've got the word road right in their name. but we second guessed them. And there's been I could go on for hours about board members, previous board members, current board members who benefited from paving. And then I could do what I've talked about in the past is money we've always budgeted $2 million for roads, yet we never hit it. We were hitting 900,000, 1.1 million. I think one year we hit 1.5. And the point I made years ago was the roads aren't getting any younger. If we wait too long, now we really got a problem. It's not just a resurface, it's total reconstruction. So that's one of those things. It was kicked down the can for as long as I can remember, 15 years, where these roads we're discussing now should have been done years ago. Now we're behind the 8 ball. We're going to have to spend a lot of money to get caught up, which is why I looked at, and I called it out, is stop spending money on wants when we have deteriorating roads. We get to see a lot of pretty stuff after coming home, earning that hard-earned money to pay to the tax man, the township, enjoy the clock tower, the border wall, all the fancy stuff, and then drive to your house on a pothole-ridden road. So it's priorities. Hopefully we're all on the same page as far as having an honest conversation about how we start analyzing roads and being accurate. As far as having an attorney, and we got to stop spending. This is more money that could go for roads. I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. I got FOIA'd by Becky back in, before the primary. I didn't cry. I mean, it's no big deal. It's a FOIA. It's a pretty simple request. It says, any communication you had, send it in. Not a big deal. As long as you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. And then I'd go back to James Dykema, too. I'd like to find out more about that. So Huizinga, I remember that. I believe it was Planning Commission that said he had to have.
I can address it when you're ready, but I don't know if you want to do it now or at the end.
Yeah, and I can discuss that with you tomorrow or something. But
would you rather address that to the board, or would you rather speak?
I can tell you. I mean, first, someone asked. I know it's here. Someone asked about getting agendas emailed, and we have an email listserv that anybody can sign up for, so that's available. There was a situation where the other one was required a bond, and it was missed in the submitted documents. I mean, it was something that's been operating there for 30 years, and it was missed in the submitted documents. He contacted us, and as soon as he contacted me about it to see it, we're like, where is it? It wasn't there. That's why they got a new one. That's why he got one from January. That's why they said, turn it in. It was discovered, and that's really what the contact was at that point. So he was given a copy, but there was no bond filed originally. And that's something that didn't start until last year, so that was missed in his project. So it definitely was, but as soon as it was brought to our attention, it was obtained.
Yeah, that's always stuff I wonder is when things aren't provided or missing, or when it happens a lot, it's just, something just seems a little odd. But I believe that is about it for my comments.
All right, moving to my right. All right. First of all, I want to address the gentleman in the back about beekeeping. I also love beekeeping, but unfortunately, I'm not allowed to either. And I would love to actually address that. And because a lot of the information that was provided back in 2015, I've gone through the notes, are very misleading, and they're not accurate. It's a fear style tactic. They actually provide a lot of good for the community. I want to also address this notion that there's an ethical issue when it came to Catherine and the roads. That is grossly inaccurate. She presented 6 different options. We were provided a road list from the township, from one individual from the township, that is qualified the same as what Catherine would be to put hers together. No special training, no nothing. So to say that there's an unethical thing, that's grossly inaccurate, because not even all her lists even included her road. So she was just gambling on the fact that one would be the one that gets presented, and it's based on age. If we were to actually go back, and I did the legwork here, of the last 6 individuals that were on they're no longer here, but they served on this board. 4 of the 6 got their road repaved during that time. 66%. I would even dare say also, if you look at the individuals that are running the township, a lot of them have been here for quite some time. But again, their roads were paved when they're in that position. So it's not a new thing. And I don't understand why Catherine's neighbors should, because she ran for office now, be penalized. To be penalized because somebody on your road did something and wanted to run and get paid nothing to do what she does, pretty much. To now penalize everybody on that street, and I have a whole stack of papers right here with pictures of the staff proposed list where there are pretty good roads. And then I have a whole stack of papers, terrible roads, of the new list that was presented. And that was passed. We need to stop this online bantering, this notion that I think a lot of the issues that we're having is, I'm going to address the one woman right in the front. You said these were approved last year, and they were approved by board members. We're a new board, and to have proof the fact that these lists are not on any type of plan, there's no, I keep hearing 15-year plan. Well, all these roads that just got picked were on a 21 to 28-year plan. And proof that there's no plan is the fact that if you were to ask right now, we don't even know what roads are going to be done next year. We don't. Because it's put together in the fall. And to address the other gentleman in the back about increasing expenditure, I went over the past 12 years. I looked at the road budget that is allotted and the activity of what we spent. The total road budget over the past 12 years, which is generally this year, is $2.136 million. We have spent, okay, so the budgeted for the past 12 years was $23.6 million. That's what we budgeted. We have spent $12.8 million. So we went from 23.6 budgeted, and I get it from the fiscal conservative side. Oh, sweet, I'm under budget. But that's not how roads work. Because they're always still going to be there, and they're going to be worse the next year. See, the fact that we've only spent 55% of our road budget, when now, unfortunately, this new board is faced with some issues. We can't be Santa Claus anymore. We can't do all these wants. We spent $18.4 million in want expenditure over the past 6 years. We lost $6.1 million, all verified. I verified all this information. So we have lost or spent on wants $24.5 million in the past 6 years. You could do a lot of roads with that money. You could even use the road budget that we already set up. So I agree with all the statements that we need to at least spend what is on the road budget. I have contacts that I talked to on the Ottawa County Road Commission. If we spent 3 years and focused on getting these roads fixed, we can finally get back on track. So I would love to personally, this is going to be my little pet project, I think, at this point, because I've learned a ton about roads. I have hours of investigating this, having conversations with different people. In the goal setting, we will come out of, give me a couple months, and I'm going to be working directly with the Ottawa County as well as Rod to put together a 3-year plan at least, where these roads are going to be done in next year. These roads will be done in 2 years. We need a plan. And unfortunately, the status quo, old style of how we've done things has to change. We have to have plans moving forward, especially going through COVID. We still don't know the full impacts of that. So that's kind of I got on my pedestal for a moment, but no, I think goal setting is going to be very important. So we would love the community's feedback and what is important to them. Obviously roads are important. There's a lot of other pressing issues that we continue to talk about the same issue. We are just over 90 days in these positions. Give us some time just to get used to how this works. Get used to working as a board together. And let's move forward from that. And come forward with plans. Pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you. Catherine.
Dan, you mentioned it. I'm glad you did, but I made myself a note to mention it. I'm sorry, I think it's Sherry. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that what Dan briefly mentioned is that you can go online and actually sign up to get the agenda sent to you. And we voted a couple meetings ago that we would have it so that it has to be 1 week prior to the meeting is when those will push out. And you can sign up for the committee meeting agendas or the board meetings for all of you. You raised that point, and I didn't realize that either. Living here before I was on the board, so I just wanted to make sure you knew that it's there, so you don't have to go remembering every 2 weeks to look for it. So thank you for that question, because obviously a lot of people would probably have that same question. As far as the dollar amounts go, I'm just going to start with that. So we have $2.163 million budgeted for this current year.
2.136.
36. Oh, so close. 2.136 million, but the road list that was approved
1.522
is 1.522, primarily because when I put together the 6 alternatives, I wasn't aware of what a budget was, so I just took whatever the dollar amount was that Rod had in his total amount, and I just tried to get as close to that as possible. Doing okay? Okay, it sounded weird on my end all of a sudden. So if we were expanding that up to 2.136 million, it would take us down to like another, we're on road segment 31. There's 31 chunks of roads that were on the list that got approved. The same spreadsheet doing it, but the same methodology would be all the way down to line 48. And so, or maybe 49, I guess, with the change in the 36 to 63, I'm not sure. But at any rate, it would be a significant number. And mind you, several of those were on the same proposal that Rod had put together. But I think that it's super important in this day and age. We're so quick to be nasty to somebody else. We're so quick to point a finger. We're so quick to throw somebody under the bus and, to be a keyboard warrior or run our mouth without having the appropriate information, that I think it's super important to make sure that we are informed and we have the truth. I can agree with you or disagree with you on any given issue, but for me, that's the most important thing, is that we're starting from facts, we're starting from what the truth is, and then we can go from there. So to me, the fact that we have board members that have been publicly either tonight or on social media recently conveying a lot of mistruths is really sad to me, because then you have people that come that are upset about what's going on, and rightfully so, because they don't have the truth. They have the information that they've been given. Now, obviously, we can't control what an individual does when he decides he's going to print 500 flyers and stick them on everybody's mailbox. That wasn't done by the township. And I don't think anybody here is to blame or get credit, however you want to look at it, for that particular issue. But some of the things that have been talked about even tonight, I just want to be very clear about. First of all, it's been mentioned several times that I have one list that I saw the very first meeting we had, I believe it was November 23rd, that I saw that there was this proposed list, and that I wanted the topic tabled till we had another meeting so that we could then, I could come up with my own list. That's not accurate at all. In fact, we were given the list, I want to say like 4 days before, the whole packet like 4 days before that meeting, and I spent hours combing through it, and I could not figure out why the roads that were picked, because I went and used my own eyes and my own car and my own common sense, and I drove on the roads. And when you have, for example, the neighborhood, I think it's Stonehenge, that is between 1001 8th, south of 44th Street. It's a newer neighborhood. I believe that the entire neighborhood was built around 2006, 2007. When you had several of their streets were on the proposed list, and the roads had been resurfaced in 2006 and 2007. And if you look at these pictures, by the way, there's extra copies. Anybody come take them if you'd like. It shows some of those very roads, and some of the very roads we're talking about now that are on the list. The ones that I saw, and I didn't go on every single road, but I took a statistical sampling, and I just said, okay, and we went and drove around, and we went and looked to see, make sure we're making an informed decision. I didn't go into the thing thinking, well, Rod made a bad list. I'd never met Rod before. I had no idea of knowing whether he'd be good or bad at that. But we were literally given a list of not all the roads in the township, but the ones that he was suggesting that we do, and no context to know, well, I won't even go there. That's a whole other point. So we drove around and we looked at what all the roads were that were on the above the cutoff and below the cutoff, and I was really surprised to see that so many of the roads that were not on Rod's proposed list were in terrible condition. And then the roads that were on his list, many of them, not all, were not only newer, but they're in excellent condition. Some of them don't even have any patches, any holes at all. In my neighborhood, yeah, I live there, but the patches have patches, and like my neighbor said, it still grows grass in the middle of the road. So I don't think that's appropriate at all. Not at all. So one of my 6 proposals that I put together was to sort it by age. But to say that it was the only factor and deterioration had nothing to do with it, and that it was just a matter of how can I finesse this so that my house, my road gets repaved, that is, I'll just go with the grossly inadequate or grossly inaccurate statement, because that's what it is. I literally had 6 lists that, by the way, I had prepared by the November 23rd meeting, and I had printout for anybody in the public who was going to be in attendance, as well as staff, as well as the 7 board members that were supposed to be here. And 3 board members were not here, I think. So we ended up having our meeting then November 30th. I again brought the packets, and by that point they had been emailed out. I was not the one that wanted to issue tables. Also in that meeting, it was mentioned by Mr. Schwalm that we redid all the committees, and we got all the committees the way that we wanted them. The very interesting thing about that is that I was ready to fully discuss, and we did have quite a bit of a discussion in that meeting about all these proposals, and no one, by the way, ever said the roads that were on the proposed list that I had were bad. No one ever said, well, I've driven on those and they're not needing to be paved. So the discussion that was had, though, was full and robust, but then it was said, well, it needs to go back to committee. And I didn't vote in favor of it going to committee. By the way, it is the committee that I'm on. Not a committee I wanted to be on. I explicitly said I did not have any interest in being on there. Becky actually said she had been on there and had an interest. She could go either way. And I fought against being on that committee, but I was condescendingly put on that committee. And so then I showed up to the meeting and I discussed the proposal at the committee that I was forced to be on. And then again, as somebody pointed out, I'm one of 3 in a committee. I'm one of 7 on the board. I can't just make stuff happen on my own. So it was totally rehashed again in the committee meeting, and a list emerged from that meeting. And then we had another board meeting after that, and guess what? Instead of just trusting what the committee did in that, our supervisor decided we needed to rehash and have a several, not several, but at least an hour and a half long discussion just on the roads alone, and we reopened the whole discussion, and then eventually it came to a vote, and we voted on that list, and it got passed. So to say that we've had it hashed out on 3 different meetings, I wasn't the one that wanted it moved. I didn't come in with one list. I had 6 proposals, and I talked about what each of the 6 were. I discussed why I thought it was inappropriate to go with the list that was presented, given the condition, not just the age of the roads. And it came out of a committee and got voted on. And yet somehow, all this time later, let's just attack Catherine Henry and say that there's an abuse of power. I think it's interesting, though, that it's okay that it's been a secret that every time that the supervisor's road got paved or our superintendent or assistant superintendent or anybody else, that there was never a broadcasting of the fact that their road was getting repaved. And for the people that were on the board whose roads ended up getting repaved, they did not withhold their vote from that. And quite frankly, it would actually be a little bit impossible because we're not voting yes or no on one road. We're voting on a list of roads. So to say that as a board member, you can just not vote on roads because your road might be the ones voted on, it's logically not possible because we all live in the township. It could be our neighborhood that gets voted on. But I think it's very important that we have the facts here about this because the other thing that was brought up is that we didn't follow policy, that we're not following the rules. And the rules were that we have to have the staff create the list. First of all, it's not what the policy says. It says superintendent. So if we're going to be sticklers for words, the superintendent did not create the list. The assistant superintendent did. And that's no offense to the assistant superintendent or how they break up roles, but if we're going to be sticklers and say you got to go with every word, then go with every word. But aside from that, it doesn't say that we are bound by that list. It says they are proposing a list. Well, if you are bound to go with whatever list of any topic that is proposed, what is the purpose of a board voting? What is the purpose of having discussion? Why would this be any kind of representative democracy in any kind of way? There'd be no point. It would just be the people that are appointed to those positions doing all the work. So it brings me to the concerns about getting FOIA'd shook somebody up, and to be very upset that they can't be zoomed in to a meeting when most municipalities are. Being willing to take a risk that is unconstitutional because the other municipalities are doing it. To be worried that you have to word everything just right. You shouldn't have to worry about that because you didn't think people would ever see the emails you're doing on behalf of the township. I'm concerned about that because FOIA has been a law since long before I came on the board. Open Meetings Act has been in place long before I came on the board. The Constitution certainly has been in place longer than any of us have been on this board. So to say that we should be afraid of what the people will find out about our communications, to suggest that somebody who, my husband or not, I was actually mad. I'm going to be honest. I was mad when my husband submitted that FOIA. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Now I'm going to get blamed for crap. Thanks. I haven't even seen the results of the FOIA. I don't know anything about it other than he did it. He submitted it. So I knew what was going to happen though. So for me to get blamed for that is ridiculous. But he has every right to make a FOIA. So do you, so do you, so do you. Even you that doesn't live here, you have a right to make a FOIA if you want to know anything about what's going on here. Because this is the United States of America. And this is the people. You're right, ma'am. The people work for you. We work for you. If you can't see our communications, then how do we work for you? You have every right to see what we have. And if somebody's afraid of disclosing their communications to the public, that means they're doing something wrong. And if they're saying, well, other municipalities are doing these Zoom meetings, so I'm willing to risk that it's unconstitutional or illegal, I'm not okay with that. I very clearly laid out the law and the Constitution, and it is not okay to violate the law. It's not okay to violate the Constitution just to be comfortable, or just because that's what you want to do, or just because the other townships are doing it. So I'm really concerned that we're going to make a statement about, well, I just don't feel comfortable being at these meetings anymore without an attorney. You know what? You guys have done a darn good job of making sure I'm not comfortable at any one of these meetings from day one. You have made it very clear that I'm not welcome on this board, that my opinion is not valued. So if that's the judge we're going to go by, that's the measure we're going to go by, is whether you're comfortable, then we have long surpassed that. But no matter what, it shouldn't be about whether we're comfortable. It should be about transparency. It should be about fiscal responsibility. It should be about answering to the citizens. So, does it make me uncomfortable that we have people that came here and said that I have the abuse of power because my road ended up getting done? Yeah, I'm not happy about it. I disagree with it. He has every right to be here and say that, though, because that is the system of government we have. And if he wants to FOIA and maybe he already did, I don't know, get any communications that have been on this issue or whatever he wants about that, he has every right to do that. And I'm not afraid of that, and I shouldn't be afraid of that. So I am really disgusted that we're not going to follow the law, and we're not going to follow the Constitution, and we're going to attack people who question when it's on the other side. When you're getting questioned, then it's not okay. So, speaking of unity, yeah, I would love to have some unity. There's been a lot of discussions here where I have been dumbfounded that we've had votes. I've been the no vote, the one no vote on several issues. And I've walked away going, oh my gosh, how am I the only no vote on that? But it is what it is. So, for us to somehow go to the level, though, of personal attacks, for us to resort to commenting on Facebook posts with things that are not accurate, to sow division, instead of having things be in the open forum and have courtesy and respect, that's where we're going to have problems. This is not going to get any better. So, to me, if you're afraid of FOIA, you need to stop doing what you're doing. If you're not willing to come to a public meeting and answer to the public, then you need to not be on the board. And if you want things clear about who's on which road, or you want other things clear, how about let's make this clear? There was no approved list. And if there were comments by some board members that there was an approved list and there was an expectation about which roads, we never got that. Us new people never got that. We had no idea what list. And in fact, now, I asked Jerry the other day, Jerry and I were talking about the fact that there is, or I think you made the comment too, there is no list going forward. There's no list for next year. So it's great that we should have, somebody made the comment at some point today about we should have a 3-year list or something so we can have the community all on the same page and knowing what's going ahead. We should. But to tell people from an official position that there was a list and that we're throwing people over because we're changing the way that it's done, it's not fair to you to get that information because it's not information. So whether you're mad at me or not, that's fine, but I want you to at least have the truth and you can be mad at me for what I actually did instead of what I didn't do. So I don't think that is where the ethical problem comes into play. There is a huge ethical problem if we're going to badmouth residents who submit FOIAs, if we're going to give misinformation out there, if we're going to hide secret road lists or any lists at all. If there's ever going to be information that never made it into all the hours we hashed out this road issue, never was there a list presented saying, hey, here's this long-term plan we have. Never. So if there's secret lists, that's unethical. But we really need to be kind and we need to be respectful for people. Because lying about people is not respectful. And telling people in the community just so that they can be mad at me for something that doesn't exist. Oh, her road wasn't due to be up yet. And I know you guys didn't create the flyer, but obviously with your comments here as well as online, it was very clear that you thought that was the case.
I've done nothing on that.
What, you had your say, I was...
I'm going to intervene.
No, you're not going to intervene.
I am going to intervene.
Nope, I'm finishing my comment.
You may, but we're not going to have banter back and forth.
No, we're not going to have banter back and forth.
You do need to be respectful of the time. You've been given a long time, and I want you to have the time.
If I'm personally attacked, I'm going to address it.
I want to make sure that you are heard, but I also want to make
So
sure
then
that
let me finish my comment.
Okay, please.
Thank you. So we need to make sure that we are telling the truth to people. We need to make sure that we are being courteous, even if you do not like the other people on the board. I'm not going to run out on social media and undercut whatever recommendations Jim might have wanted on XYZ project because I thought it was a stupid decision. Nope, I have my piece out here in this room, in this setting, and that's it. And then we need to move forward with the decisions that we've made. But then to say we also need to have an attorney here, there are 2 attorneys here, but guess what? It doesn't take an attorney to read the Constitution, and it doesn't take an attorney to read the law. That's not what this country is designed to be like. This is not an oligarchy. We the people that are supposed to be in charge. So if we the people can't discuss the legal requirements, if we the people are at all concerned about it, let me put it this way. Every single time that you guys have voted in favor of doing something that was blatantly illegal, and you just said, well, I just feel like you're wrong. No one has ever been able to pull up the statute and just say, this is the point right here. Every single time that I have been concerned about something, I've had it pulled up and I have been trying to have the discussion. So why don't we actually do our homework and read the laws? If you have questions ahead of time, then ask someone. Ask an attorney if you want to. But don't sit there and say that we have to bring in some third attorney to pay more money when we already have $35,000 budgeted for legal in this department and $5,000 budgeted for legal in this department. It's something like $65,000 is what we have budgeted for legal already, which is insane. We just need to do the right thing and be willing to work for the people. So from now on, I'm asking you guys to do the right thing. You can disagree with me all you want, but I'm asking you to treat me with respect, and I'm asking you to not lie or give out misinformation to people, or even further, somebody else's misinformation, because it does not serve our community in one way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Becky, anything you wish to add?
I just have 3 very quick points. One of them is one of the first years that I was on the board and was on utilities committee. Rod's Road was one of them that was up for resurfacing. And it just stuck with me as an indication of his character and as an indication of how we operate. Rod went above and beyond to make sure that the utilities committee, when that list came before us, that we were aware that yes, he was driving these roads and giving them scores, and that his road was on it. And he gave us every opportunity to drive them and question his scoring, and was just very upfront about it. And so, honestly, I don't care. If Catherine's house is on the road, a road that's being repaved or not. I wasn't aware when we voted that it was. I don't care after the fact that it is, but it really stuck with me how above and beyond, both in utilities and then when the list had come before the board some years ago, that Rod was just incredibly honest and front-loaded with, I just want you to be aware I live here. And so that stuck with me, so thank you, Rod, for doing that. My second thought is with regard to FOIA emails. Yes, Michael, I did serve a FOIA on you, but it was for something that I very much felt like is matter of public record, like income statements and things like that are housed on computers within this building. I think that the reason that John and I share some of his sentiments, were surprised when specific emails could get FOIA'd, is that our email accounts aren't at georgetown-mi.gov. They are not governmental emails. It is when we got elected, we had been told, would you like us to set up a Georgetown one for you, or would you like to use Gmail? I knew that Gmail worked well with my phone, so I set up my own Gmail account. No one else has that password. It isn't run by Georgetown Township. Of course, when the FOIA was served, I happily provided the emails that fell underneath that. But I was flabbergasted that those emails, not because I had anything to hide, but I was just flabbergasted that emails where I thought that residents had an expectation of privacy reaching out to me, or that I had an ability to respond to their questions. I was just flabbergasted that those could be subject to a FOIA. John, I have since added a signature to my Gmail account that just says, so that you're aware, these emails are considered a matter of public record and could be subject to a future FOIA request, because I feel like people that email us deserve to have that information that I didn't have originally. And so I would encourage you, if you're concerned about it, to do the same. And if you need help setting that up in Gmail, I do know how to do that. My last thought is totally off every topic we've talked about today, but it has to do with Memorial Day. The Jennison's marching band always marches in the Memorial Day parade and then performs at our cemetery service. They always liaise with Carol Skolma, but now she isn't on the board anymore, and their band director is a colleague of mine. And so Dave Zamborski had just reached out to me and said, hey, where are we at? Dan and Rad and I had a little conversation at services that it seems like the AMBUCs are moving forward with the plans, but probably not very optimistic that restrictions will be lifted enough come late May that we'll actually be able to have that event. And so I just wanted to throw out that my most recent conversation with Mr. Zamborski, I did share that with him, said that they need spring break as a deadline. If they're going to participate, they have to have a final direction on that by spring break, which is the first week of April. Only because this year is especially tricky because Jennison's commencement is prior to Memorial Day. And so if they're going to need uniforms, it just gets very complicated when you have people graduating. So I just wanted to do a quick check-in on that, or at least put spring break as a deadline on people's radar. Perfect. Will you keep Dave Zamborski and I in the loop? Awesome. Thank you. And that's all for me.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'll wrap up the meeting tonight. I've been on the board, my 13th year. I've never had as much drama in a meeting as what we've had tonight. We may start getting more people show up to these meetings if we keep providing this. Sometimes we're fairly dull, I'd say, by and large. Obviously not tonight. And frankly, it may be a failure of leadership on my part. I didn't see it coming, and I didn't see how deep-rooted it was. And so to that degree, I apologize to you as a board because I truly didn't have my finger on that pulse. So I want you to know that I respect every one of you. I believe we're going to have good and productive meetings. I believe we're going to do a lot of good for the township. I welcome both the new board members as well as commend those that have served in the past. I appreciate all of you. I really do. So I'll do a better job, hopefully, of maybe sensing either undertones or feelings that people have, because I want people to be, I said at the outset of the first meeting, not necessarily in unity in the sense of voting together, not unanimity, but unity in the sense of being able to work together even with our differences. And we clearly have differences, and we will continue to have them. I'm not naive as to think that somehow we vented and now everybody, is going to like each other. I know that we all have a common purpose. I know that we share that purpose. There's not a one of you on this board that I question that you care about this community. And so I think with that as our guiding force for all of us, that even with the differences and the disagreements, the different votes we'll have, I mean, we've had more votes that were disparate, I suppose, in the first 2 months here, 3 months, than what we had typically in a year. And that isn't, automatically somehow a bad thing or a good thing. It just is, okay? And we've got passions, we've got gifts, we've got different skill sets that we bring to the table, and we're going to be our own voice, but hopefully a voice that sings in harmony with the others, and even when we disagree, to do so without being disagreeable. And to that end, I want to speak to the one thing I assimilate from the roads issue is I do see commonality and agreement among us, which is we should be spending more money to pave roads. And you know what? I commend those of you that have forcefully put that out there. I think that that is an accurate statement. I think that as county funding has not increased over the years, and of course cost of construction of roads, or rather repaving, goes up, I guess played a little too conservative at times. But I'm grateful that we have the ability to pave more roads, and it sounds like there's some consensus that could be built along those lines. Now, and it's not my point to try and address everything that was said. We could all sit here all night and try and counterpoint. I do want to at least clarify for my own self. I've never voted to have my road paved. So, it was said that, as an example tonight, that I haven't. Would I think it was wrong or the end of the world? No. And my point, and I guess I'm kind of forced to do so a bit, Catherine, by your comments, and I would rather do so privately, but I made a comment publicly, and I want to clarify with you. I respect you, and I'm not sure why you have the feeling of not being accepted, because I've sat in the meetings where we've had the interaction, and I haven't heard people denigrate, and I truly hope that that doesn't happen, because in my role in the chair, I don't want that to be the case. Now, the one thing that I've said that I want to specifically address is that in pointing out that your road was being paved, I was not making the point, and I think I clarified it that very night, which is to say there's nothing that would prevent any one of us from voting on a list of roads that might include our own, okay? When they came through a third party, more or less, if you might want to see it that way, through the investigation of the superintendent or what have you, then you weren't really the lead voice, and so it didn't probably, for those who may have voted in the past on their own road and so on, they weren't the driving force. And so to that degree, it was a little different. But here, where, Catherine, you were the driving force, my only point, and I made it clear that night, was I thought you at least ought to make that clear, hey, full disclosure, I think I can use those words, full disclosure, my road's among these, but that's not the reason why I'm pushing this. I don't even think that any of us needs to recuse ourselves. I think we have the right to vote on for example, in this case, a board or a road, rather, that might be our own. So I know you're shaking your head, Catherine, but I'm saying I know that night, and you take the meetings, I made it clear, and I simply said, I feel like it's something that should have been said in the interest of candor, to say, look, now this isn't why I made this list, this isn't why my road's on the list, but it is, and I just want you to know that in the interest of disclosure, kind of like Rod has done in the past.
For all 6 lists, but I
No,
suppose?
I didn't.
I'm just asking, because you weren't making it clear that night, so I'm asking now.
I only asked at the end, said, now the one we just voted on, I'm confused because there's several lists. Is your road on the one that we just voted on? And you said, oh, yeah, it is. And I said,
being the fourth oldest.
The interest of, no, and I'm not questioning the motive. In other words, your road is bad and your road hasn't been done for years. And my only point had been, it would have been the fairer thing to do to say, in the interest of full disclosure, as the one kind of coming up with a list and really driving the discussion, I just think you ought to know, but that's not my, don't address me, because I didn't.
6 lists? Are you saying,
I'm not getting into the banner with you.
It's not banter, it's a question.
I will say, for the sake of those of you who are here, and I want it to be clear, because she wasn't
But
clear
you're not being clear.
speaking of.
I'm just asking. I presented 6 lists.
Yeah.
Were you saying I should say my house is on this one but not this one, it is on this one but not on this one? Because it was not on all of them.
I think that would have been fair, yeah. To say, now, my road's on a couple of these lists in full disclosure and not on all of them, yeah, that would have been the right thing to do. But I want to say, I didn't question your right to vote on it. I haven't sent or made a social post. I haven't sent an email. That FOIA didn't do anything. I didn't have any emails. I haven't communicated with Gene Altina or whoever the others are. Nobody, okay? And so it was not something that if it's being generally said here, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I have not tried to stir the pot in any way, shape, or form. I made one simple point, which obviously I regret now, because it's at least been part of the catalyst in what has blown up here. But my only point had been to say, and I could have made it outside of a meeting, which is, you know what, I think for the future, it would probably be best if you made that sort of disclosure. It just seems like the right thing to do. But I'm not questioning the right of any one of us to be able to vote on a list that might include our own roads. It troubles me that, and I got to stick with you, Catherine, only because you addressed it toward me, and that is, I don't know again why you had the perception of being rejected on this board. We've only had a handful of meetings so far, and I haven't heard anyone reject you unless you take a vote as a rejection. In other words, okay, good. So I don't.
Then if you're really wanting to know, you and I can have a discussion afterwards.
I would be happy to do so, but
it's mostly you, quite frankly. So I would be happy to talk with you afterwards if you really want to know.
All right. Well, very good. I'll do so, and I think that you need to give the respect that you expect to receive. So John may not be a lawyer, he may not understand as you believe you do what's constitutional and not, but he was genuinely hurt by not being able to participate in that meeting. We can say whether he was right or wrong legally on that, but people are entitled to their feelings just as you are. And so the fact that you are hurt, the fact that he feels hurt, I'm not happy about that as the leader in the middle. I don't want people to feel disrespected, but at least we have to have the sensitivity to know, as I think you're struggling with, Catherine, and maybe you too, John, I don't know, but to be able to see the other person's perspective, because if you don't feel some of what we feel coming from your direction as well, then you're not being candid with yourself. So I don't wish to in any way foment dissent or disunity to the degree that I have been a part of that. I apologize to this board. That will not be what marks these 4 years, if I have anything to say about it. For example, about the roads, we have now had our say tonight for as long as we wished. We will not have another discussion like this about roads in the public forum in terms of going at each other. We can talk all day long about what's the best methodology and everything of that kind, but we have now had our say, all right, and we're not going to do that again. Furthermore, the banter between and the emotional banter between board members is not something that's going to be tolerated meeting to meeting either, from me either, okay? We had to get some things, I guess, off our chest. We've done so, but that's not going to be how this board operates. It's not going to be what, as long as I have a say in it, is what's going to be permitted. So as much as possible, if you can handle things outside of board meetings, talk directly to one another, try to reconcile with each other. I think that's the Matthew 18 principle, right? You go first to your brother or your sister, and then if that doesn't work, then maybe you take it broader. But I just want to say, as much as it's within our own control, let's be at peace with one another. Let's work together with each other. I'm imperfect. Each of us is imperfect. I'm going to hit a little reset button here because I still look forward to working with all of you, okay? And all of you. I respect every one of you, and I'm not always perfect, perhaps, in how I express it to you, but to the degree I can do better, I will, all right? And I want this board to be in unity. I want to be a better supervisor. I want you to be better board members. I want us to work in harmony as best we can and deliver for the public. The focus should never be on us, and it rarely has been in the years I've been on the board. Focus should be on the public. And to the extent we can make that the case, let's make sure we do so. All right? So, having said that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Come on.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned.